That's it. It's dance party here on the Sunday show after dark. Me and Forrest getting down. How's everybody doing? How are you doing today, Forrest?
I'm awesome. I just woke up recently. I had a party last night, and I also haven't been sleeping a lot. And so I've just been waking up at like 4 and staying up until like noon, and my brain is, I'm here. Hey,
Sweet. Well, welcome.
how are you?
I also see I'm doing all right. We were supposed to have somebody come by before noon because we knew Arden needed to work for both shows and everything, and they slept till noon. So they were going to sleep when you were waking, or they were waking up when you were going to sleep.
Yep.
I am now on a fairly normal schedule, but I noticed your T-shirt, Roll for Initiative. How did your event, your last Roll for Initiative event turn out?
We have so far raised $28,200 and something for Doctors Without Borders, and we have one more little live stream event left before we're calling that the end of season 1. And so we're gonna break 30K, which is way more than we put into it. And that is actually the small goal that we were at when we were like, if we get at least that much, then it's reasonable to put in this much effort to do it again. And so we're kind of talking about what we're going to do next. But yeah, really, really well. We're saving lives all around the world by playing, silly ass characters in a tabletop game.
I may have posted the wrong link on Twitter to the show. So spread the word, everybody. Go out and post it. Yes, every one of you who's tuned in right now, there's still under 1,000 of you tuned in for the After Dark. It's like they didn't know Forrest was here. Go tell everybody Forrest is here and that this is a version of the Sunday show where we take calls. And what we'd like, ideally, is theistic callers who want to defend what they believe, not just call in and say, why are you an atheist? I'm an atheist because there's insufficient evidence to conclude reasonably that there is a God. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much it, yeah.
We can go into it in more detail. If you're calling in because you disagree with us on some particular subject, I guess that's okay, depending on what the subject is. We're happy to have conversations. What we don't want is a bunch of atheist callers calling in to tell us their life story and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We may have, I think there's an opportunity to add a show that is more about calling in to get advice and talk and connect with others. One where we're building an atheist community as opposed to the actual direct interaction and debate. And we'll be looking at that. We will still take calls like that on occasion, but we will always prioritize theists. And the calls are queuing up right now. And so as we're getting ready, as we're getting ready to queue up those calls, I'd like to remind everybody you're watching the Line Network. You should go ahead and click like and subscribe, and you can join, and you can go to patreon.com/calltheline, and you can go to linemerch.com to get more stuff and all the bazillion D1 ways for you to help support what we're doing here. I am here today to just mildly nudge and steer the ship in the most Zen-like fashion anyone has ever done. My goal is to make people talk about how Forrest was the absolute bad guy asshole today.
Truth.
And that Matt just seemed to be, phoning it in. I don't think it's going to last very long, but, we can go down that line. Really, ideally, and here for those who are new to the show, I am a former Christian, primarily Southern Baptist. I did attend Pentecostal services when they were having like concerts for Carmen and Petra and things like that, which was, awesome. Who thought that God was calling me to ministry and then eventually found my way out. I spent after 8 years in the Navy, and then I worked in tech for a number of years. And then the short version is I thought God was punishing me for not becoming a preacher, and I set out to be the best Christian I could be. And it turns out that is the best, or one of the ways to become an actual godless, heathen, atheist, secular humanist. And for the record, by atheist, it doesn't necessarily mean I am convinced there are no gods. It might merely mean I am not convinced there are gods. But depending on your God definition, I might be convinced that God doesn't exist. It very much depends, because there are God definitions that are ultimately unfalsifiable, and that makes them untestable. Forrest is a scientist and absolute wonderkind when it comes to all things biology, and we'd love to have these conversations on philosophy and religion and all this stuff. Genuinely couldn't be happier to be here with one of my favorite people. Are you ready to start taking calls and get this after dark show on the road?
I'm so friggin' ready, my friend.
All right. We're actually going to start, even though we probably shouldn't. But Roberto, you've got to turn the show off so that we don't hear it in the background. But Roberto is calling from Florida. It's agnostic, and you have a question for us about reincarnation. So go ahead.
Yes. Okay. I know you said we're not going to give we shouldn't give the life story or whatever, but just a quick 15 seconds. I was a hardcore
just
atheist.
ask the question. Just ask the question.
Okay.
Because whether or not you were Roberto, listen to me. Whether or not you was a hardcore atheist, I don't give a fuck. There are plenty of hardcore atheists that are boneheaded, stupid, irrational.
I thought you were going to be Zen.
And evil. I'm sorry. Keep interrupting me and see how that goes. So there's no reason to ever tell anybody I used to be an atheist or I am an atheist, because I guarantee you what you believe or don't believe about a God isn't necessarily relevant to what we're going to consider anything else. So you have a question. Welcome to the show. Ask your question.
I love starting the conversation with, I know you specifically asked me not to do this. However, I'm going to...
That's disrespectful as fuck, but go ahead.
Oh my goodness. All right. We're starting off on the sort of the wrong foot. Okay,
all I need you to do, you need you to come in and do commentary on the show. I just need to ask your question so we can get it moving. Why is this so difficult? What's your question?
Okay. So should we believe in reincarnation?
No.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any good reason to believe in reincarnation.
Now, can I have a minute to present my case?
Oh, I thought you were just calling to ask a question. Do you believe in reincarnation?
Not 100%. Okay. I believe that we should take it into consideration as far as kind of like what scientists do. They pose hypothesis,
Roberto,
and then they try to prove it, right?
Roberto, I don't need you to try and explain what scientists does because you don't understand. What I need is if you, and I didn't ask if you were 100%. I asked if you believed in reincarnation. That means, are you convinced that something that you can identify as reincarnation occurs?
No, I'm not convinced.
Then why are we having any conversation at all? So you called in to ask us if we should believe in it. Forrest and I said no. You also don't believe in it. I think the call's over. Thanks.
Well, hello?
Yes, we're still here.
Holy smoke. Okay. Okay.
But I'm hanging up on you because I'm hanging up on you. Roberto, I'm hanging up on you because you called us to ask a question. We answered it. And then we tried to see if you believed differently from us, and you don't, which means there's nothing further to discuss here that's of any interest to me.
Well, but I'm not 100% that.
I didn't ask if you were 100%. I didn't ask if you were 100%. We already went down this road, Roberto.
Is there any good reason at all to believe in reincarnation whatsoever? Is there any good reason at all?
Okay, to put it on the table, yes. The reason why I'm saying it is
because, if there's a good reason, then you should believe in it.
Yeah, if there's a good reason, why don't you believe?
Okay. All right. So I actually wanted to have a discussion, with both of you, with Forrest, and in a
answer the question.
Way. And
why don't you believe in it if there's a good reason?
Because I don't believe in it 100%. That's the thing.
I didn't ask about 100%. Are you we didn't ask. I don't know how many. If Roberto, the easiest. Shut up. The easiest way to make me lose my cool is to force me to repeat myself and to avoid the fucking question. Now, we've already established.
All right, I don't believe in it.
Stop fucking talking.
Holy smokes. Okay.
Did you just say, all right, I do believe in it?
Yes.
You're a liar, and I'm banning you from the show right now. I've got your number.
No,
Goodbye.
I'm not.
You are a liar. You either lied to us before or you're lying now, in which case I don't need you around. Goodbye, Roberto. So, Forrest.
Off to a Zen start. We're doing great.
Yeah, I suspected that because Roberto is frequently problematic. And here's the thing. I think Roberto needs a good friend. I'm not your friend, Roberto. I'm pretty sure Forrest isn't your friend. You don't need to call in and hang out with us on the weekend to discuss things that none of us believe in. And then when you find out you're going to be hung up on for wasting time and not having any subject, then turn around and say, oh, but I do believe in it. Because either you lied before or you're lying now. Either way, that's where my patience ends with liars. But we have other people calling.
One of the calls of all time on this show.
Yep. That was a call. By the way, when it comes to reincarnation, there are a number of people who advocate for it in both a religious sense, but there are people who talk about it in a non-religious sense, as if there's some biological reason to think that something that makes me somehow survives my death. You hear stories of near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. When we actually investigate and put those claims to the test, we have yet to find sufficient evidence to think that those things are actually happening the way they are, or the way they're perceived. But since I don't know, and Forrest, you might know, is there a current model, even a hypothetical proposed model, to explain why people might experience this perception of being out of their body, either in near death or out of body experiences, and even if they aren't?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist nor a neuroscientist, so I'm not 100% on it. As far as I know, the overwhelming just idea here is just your brain is starving of oxygen. You're dreaming. You're having an experience that I think what's most compelling about out-of-body experiences and things like that is that they always tend to align with the beliefs, the religious beliefs of the person who's having them. So when people see a light at the end of the tunnel and all these things, that makes sense. I have also passed out from blood loss before, and you get tunnel vision and all that. That makes sense. But everything else that comes along with it, seeing your relatives, seeing God, seeing an angel, seeing whatever, those tend to be very culturally, you know what I mean? Spot on. So for me, as far as I know, it's just you're having a dream. Your brain's doing stuff because it lacks stimulus and nutrients, and you're having a problem. But there might be there is certainly a neuroscientist out there who can give a little bit more of a detailed answer.
The other thing that I've heard about when studying up on this is there's a view that if you are unconscious and then you return to consciousness, the suspicion is that your brain needs to try to figure out what happened in the time that it was unconscious. And it will then interpolate and invent a story based on the available facts. Hey, I was in a hospital. I was in here for this thing. They were working on me, whatever else. Oh, I guess I must have died and come back or whatever. But because memory is a weird thing, we know that memories can be manipulated, altered, and just untrue. That your brain hates not knowing. And in the same way that when we look around at the world, our eyes don't hit every thing in our field of view all at once. We scan around, and then our brain builds a picture, a model, and a 3D representation. Our brains are so good at that. Why would it be surprising to anyone that a brain starved of oxygen a brain in a weakened or failing state, a brain in a chemically altered state from drugs and trauma, would try to make up a story to make sense of the world when that's exactly what it does when we're awake. Everything you know and believe and see is your brain making up a story about the world. What we hope is that the story our brain's making up matches the world.
Yeah. And that isn't always the case. So, yeah, makes sense.
We've got theistic callers calling in. Thomas in Washington, pronounce him. He's been raised Catholic, but started doubting recently and is terrified of not being a Christian anymore. Thomas, how you doing? You're on with Forrest and Matt.
Hello, Forrest. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
I'm doing not too great, but thank you for asking. How about you guys? How are you guys doing?
We're here to help. We're feeling good.
I'm the most zen person on the planet and just proved it.
I'm the mean one. I'm the bad cop in this show, you butt. I'm here to say words to you.
Well, we'll do it. Thank you. Pretty much just the topic. I have been raised Catholic all my life. I started recently. I'm getting my master's in philosophy. I watch a lot of philosophy on YouTube, and I just saw a video one day, criticizing the Christian God, and then I kept watching and reading and going through skeptic arguments, and I found some videos by you guys, Matt and Forrest, and I've just unfortunately I agree with Matt. Matt, you talked about how the Bible supported slavery, and I was like, there's no way. I looked in the Bible, and there it was. It was right there. Then I thought about if I had any evidence for God. I don't. I have nothing. I have no good evidence. Yet I believe it. Or did believe it. I don't know if I still do. I'm scared.
Yeah. This is the first stage of when you start to question these things. You grew up Catholic, you say, and so this is something that you've had not only the carrot but also a very, very big stick held over your head for all your life. This is something that is not only unquestionable, but to question it is flirting with damnation. So it makes sense that you're scared. You should forgive yourself for that. I would recommend, on a Catholic note, your name is Thomas. Check out Saint Thomas, who famously Jesus came back and he met with his disciples. I think this is in Matthew. I think he met with the disciples. They all gathered together and they were like, "Yo, Jesus is back, bitches!" And Thomas doubted them and was like, until you can show me, I'm not going to have a reason to accept this. That sounds ridiculous. That's why we still have the phrase doubting Thomas today when somebody, is questioning people obnoxiously, because we don't like questioning. And Jesus then appeared before Thomas. Jesus came there in the flesh to the place and was like, "Dude, it's me." And Thomas still didn't believe him and was like, "Let me put my fingers in the hole in your hands, and the holes in your feet, and the holes in your side. Let me feel the wounds of your crucifixion." And he did. Jesus held his hands out and showed his side. And it says Jesus stuck his finger. Thomas fingered Jesus for a while and figured out that these things were serious. And the next line, he then says, "Okay, you're real then. Now you're my Lord and God. I believe you." And the next line in that chapter then says that he demonstrated in many other ways that he was really who he said he was. But I forgot the exact wording. But the Bible says he demonstrated in several other ways, which we don't need to write down here or something like that. Just take my word for it. He didn't let them take his word for it, is basically what the Bible says. And so you as a person now in 2024, you are expected to take this story not only on bad evidence, but on no evidence, taking the word of a bunch of virgin priests who have just been repeating the same thing that they heard for a long time with no evidence from anybody. You're supposed to just believe it. Meanwhile, Jesus himself was super down with giving people immense amounts of evidence for what he was claiming, for actually standing up to scrutiny, for being questioned and challenged and proving himself. And you don't get that privilege. You're the one who's supposed to be more blessed because you believe without evidence, because you just have faith. It's totally unfair and ridiculous for them to expect that of you. And even the book that you're supposed to be believing in has a different standard than what they want you to have. If there is a God, that God wouldn't judge you or be mad at you for using the brain that it gave you. And if there's no good evidence for this belief, you shouldn't have this belief.
But also, we know that that story, it can't be true as stated, because Forrest is describing the Jesus character.
Yes.
And in the Gospel of John, I think it's around chapter 20, it's kind of in there, but that character is open to demonstrating the truth of its existence, except that doesn't ever bother to do it nowadays. If he can show up and stand in front of Thomas and present confirmation that he is who he says he is, there's holes in his hands, that he's died and come back to life, then he should do that for each and every person on the planet, providing them the equivalent evidence. And that doesn't happen, which suggests that the character that is portrayed as being willing to provide evidence is really only willing to provide evidence to that person on that day in that way. And the rest of us, we don't get that same good evidence. And so my view of the story is that this story never happened, and that Doubting Thomas is there for people like you, so that you can say, well, I didn't get to touch Jesus's hands, but Doubting Thomas did, and I'll just take his word for it. So it's a way not of celebrating skepticism or evidence, but of specifically setting things up so that you don't feel the need to employ skepticism and evaluate evidence. And so now the character is the facts of life is now inconsistent with that character that Forrest described.
Yeah, it really is. It's I thank you. It feels good to hear that. I go to a Catholic school. I brought this up with, we have like ministry organizations, and they gave me a lot of answers that I wasn't satisfied with, such as, oh, Jesus is love and God's love, and it's a relationship, and you just have to take it on faith, or something like that. But yeah,
what was your, out of curiosity, Thomas, when you
Yeah.
hear you just have to take it on faith, which is presumably what priests and others within your church told you, what did that
Yeah.
mean to you?
Am I allowed to swear?
Oh, you can say whatever the fuck you want. Within
But
reason.
you're encouraged to swear.
It felt like a fucking delusion. It felt
what did
like
it feel like they
looking
were
at me.
saying? When a priest looks at you and
It felt
says,
like
you
they
have
were
to take it on
telling me
faith.
like that I was like either broken or like doing something I shouldn't be doing, or like that like this doubt and this like asking for evidence is inherently wrong, or like against what like I should be doing. That like these questions and my feelings about it were either misfounded or like incorrect about like my interpretation or something like that, like I've got it all wrong, or that oh, it's everybody goes through this, and don't worry, you'll come back. It's, you just gotta keep going, you gotta keep praying, push the thoughts aside, and you'll become more more
no,
Christian.
you're fine. It is, when I hear somebody say you have to take it on faith, I always want to know kind of what that means. I mean, we're all familiar with what Hebrews 11 says about faith. But faith to me, almost every time I hear it, is an excuse to believe something without a good reason. Because if you ask Forrest, hey, Forrest, why do you believe that humans and other great apes are in fact related?
Because the morphological evidence, the fossil evidence, the genetic evidence, just a tremendous amount of actual testable scientific evidence that is empirical, that we can show to everybody, and experts in that field can all collaborate on. Evidence is the short answer.
And here's another one, real quick. Why do you believe your wife loves you?
Because of the behaviors that she exhibits, the way that she treats me and talks to me. The fact that we've been together for a very long time is way too long for it to be a long con. I know she's not in it for the money, because she knew me when I was very poor, when I was young, and we've grown in our careers together. She just, the things that she does, the things that she says, and the ways that she treats me are compatible with the model of a loving wife, and therefore there's a good reason to believe it. Even if maybe she is just a complete sociopath who's been stringing me along for no reason, I have no way to test that and know for sure. So the evidence, again, leads me to believe that she loves me.
This is what people who actually value evidence and care about the facts of reality, this is how they answer questions. This is not how people who are trying to sell you something answer questions. This is not how con artists answer questions. And while I wouldn't necessarily say that every priest or everybody trying to push a particular religion is a con artist, I don't think that's remotely true. I think some of them are sincerely convinced and confused and believe for bad reasons, but they're wholeheartedly convinced that they're right. But at no point does science require faith. And at no point does it require faith on my part to be convinced that I love someone or they love me. It doesn't take faith on my part to be a decent person. It doesn't take faith on my part to accept the facts of reality, that the Earth spins on its axis and is an oblate spheroid and orbits the sun in the outer spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy. These things are supported by evidence. And what's weird is, for you, Thomas, and for all of us who are Christian of some stripe, whether or not there's a God and an afterlife and how you get there, if it's going to be forever, has to be the single most important set of questions one could ask. And if there is a God, that God not only knows all the answers to those questions, but is seemingly in charge of it and could present good evidence for all of them to anyone. And yet he doesn't. And I never hear from that God. I only hear from the people who believe that God. That God doesn't call the show. People who believe call the show. Why on earth would we take anything on faith if faith isn't a reliable path to truth?
We shouldn't.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So now you said
I
that you
don't
were...
have a good answer to this.
No,
I
you
don't
do.
know anybody who does.
That was a great answer. We shouldn't believe it.
True.
You said you were terrified of it. Do you want to work through a little bit of that? You want to talk about it?
Sure, if that's all right.
Of course, it's all right.
I always thought there was an afterlife. I always thought there was something else. My grandma just died recently, and I was doubting before that.
So sorry.
Thank you, but I've made my peace with it. But I grew up in a very religious family. When I was younger, I believed a lot of things that I feel ashamed of now.
Why?
My whole family.
You're not alone.
Because they were evil, bigoted.
Yep.
Didn't respect other humans.
Here's the thing, Thomas.
You were lied to. You were convinced of things by people who were also convinced of bad things. You were abused as those people who abused you were also abused of these evil ideas. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Matt, but if I can briefly,
no, I was just pointing at you.
Yeah, the threat of hell and the promise of eternal life was as compelling to you as it was to the people who told that shit to you. And because they had these abusive, bigoted beliefs that were thrust upon them, probably when they were children, they were abused, they were lied to, they were taught horrible things and taught to think and believe and act on horrible things. They then passed that on to you, believing that it was good and believing that if they didn't do that, they would be tortured, they would be hurt. They did it under duress, they did it under threat, they did it because of a promise of a theme park in the sky, they did it because of fear of death and torment. They were afraid and they were abused, and they've abused and made you afraid in response. So don't feel like fuck, dude.
Yeah.
I know so many Christians who can say the same thing. Like you were, yes, that's shit to feel bad about, but don't feel too bad. You've been like a lot of people have been there with you.
I'd like you, Thomas. My best recommendation, not only can you reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org, but you might want to also reach out to the Psychotherapy Project, because the things that you feel guilty about, yes, you used to believe some awful things, but you were indoctrinated to believe those things. And you don't need to carry guilt for what you used to believe. You should be happy that you changed, because the people who indoctrinated you had the possibility to change, had access to go out and get the same information you did. They should be as open to reason and evidence and compassion as you. And for whatever reason, you found your way out and they haven't. So now, instead of feeling guilty for partly what was done to you and how gullible you were, I argued, I wasn't even Catholic, and I argued that I've been doing this for 20 years as penance for having previously convinced people of a lie. But I got over the guilt and all of that stuff by realizing my life is better now. I am better now. And the best use of my time is to help other people find their way out of this mess, and then have them join the rest of us in trying to make a world that is free of false beliefs. If there's a religion that's true, all you got to do is demonstrate it, and I'll believe. I may not like it, but until there's evidence sufficient to warrant belief, nobody should believe. And nobody should be saying, oh, I'm going to raise my kid this way without evidence. If you don't have, I mean, I get it. Trust me, I'm not a parent. Parenting is a wild thing that nobody is, I think, truly prepared for. And you're all going to screw up your kids, and all your kids are going to need therapy. Hell, all of us are going to need therapy for something. I almost wish we were sponsored by BetterHelp, except that I've heard miscellaneous things. But the point, Thomas, is I understand that you are currently finding your way out, and you're feeling guilty for things you used to believe and think. You can do that, but you will sit there and dwell on it and obsess on it, and it will keep you from doing good things. So acknowledge that you used to believe and think bad things, and that now you don't. And you should take credit for that. That's one of the most wonderful things about no longer thinking there's a sky daddy with a plan, and you have to, and everything happens according to that plan. Because if everything happens according to God's plan, you don't get to take credit for anything, but you also shouldn't be taking blame for anything. Now that you're free of that, you can take credit for the good things you do. You can take blame for the bad things that you do, and you can work to correct them. You don't have to hang on to the past.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I thank you. I definitely will reach out to some of those people, probably, or at least others in my community I know who could help me with this. It's a lot. I don't find any evidence for anything, for God, at least, or the Christian God, or any of the other religions, and that means there's only one life to live, and we should probably treat people as best we could in that one life, not relying on some afterlife punishment. And I want to say thank you specifically to Matt for that. Your your question in a different stream. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was something, you said something like, are you afraid of the other hells out there?
Yeah.
For all the different other religions. And I'm not. So if I put Christianity with all the other religions I'm not afraid of, it doesn't make sense for me to be afraid of hell. Nor do I have evidence of hell or evidence of heaven.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying that, Thomas, because 20 years I've been doing this, and I've made a lot of different arguments against fallacious, unreasonable belief. And a lot of people have credited me and the people that I work with. It's never just me. There's Forrest and Arden, and there's a call screener, there's moderators, there's people doing all this stuff, and then there's everybody that I learn from. But there are people when they credit, and then I'm like, oh, cool, what did I say? Because I'd love to have like a little bucket of here's the things that actually registered with somebody, so that I use those and not the things that didn't register. And so that line, which has happened many times over the years, is that why aren't you afraid of other hells from other religions? And if you don't know which one's true or not, should you be seeking the best hell or the best heaven, or avoiding the worst hell? Should that be the goal? And how do you tell which one's which? It is this case where nothing about an afterlife makes any sense or has any supporting evidence. If I told you right now, hey, you get to pick which religion is true, and it will become true, and the afterlife for that religion will be true, how could you possibly pick? You don't know what all of them are. You could only pick from the ones that you've heard of. And if that's the case, why not just make up your own? And wouldn't that be just as real as anybody else's, as far as the evidence shows? So, yeah.
I guess it really would.
Thanks for sharing that, Thomas.
Yeah, no, that also makes sense. But yeah, no, two things in response to that, if that's all right. One is, I don't. That's a really good point. I'm not sure if I would choose the Christian one or maybe someone's personal Christian one. It seems like every person I talk to has a different interpretation of what's going on.
Yeah.
Seems like no one really knows what the Christian God wants. And then when I look at the Bible, I think this was Forrest who said this a while ago. It could have been you. I apologize, Forrest, if it wasn't you. It was like if the God of the Bible did everything correctly and did everything, then God made the universe as is, and He made this world, and He's a monster for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Then He gave a lot of examples. It was something like if Adam and Eve had free will in the garden and there was no suffering in the garden, then God is possible to make a world with no suffering and still have free will.
It's there. J Mike, my friend, did a logical regression with it, where it's just like, if I, as a person, I could make the correct moral choice, or I could sin. If I have free will, there is a chance that with free will, I could make the right choice or the wrong choice. If not, then I would just be sinning constantly all the time, right? So the fact that I sometimes don't sin is evidence of the idea that every single choice is a choice, and I could go in either direction. And therefore, if you remember, like, a Gaussian curve, what we call a normal distribution, if when events are normally distributed, you have most of the events being around 50% of the 50-50, and some on these tail ends. A great example is like a Plinko thing. If you like drop a thing down a pegboard, most of the time it's going to land somewhere in the middle. Occasionally, it'll bounce right every single time and end up on the extreme right of the board, or it'll bounce left every single time, on the extreme left of the board. It's very rare, but it does happen. And so it's possible that somebody makes the correct choice every single time and lands on the far right side of the board, perfectly sinless, their entire life, entirely of their own free will. That is a logical possibility. And if God can create a world, which is logically possible to create, He could have made that world where every single person has free will and makes the correct choice every single time, and nobody goes to hell. He could have done that, but He didn't. He chose to create a world in which people suffer, in which people make bad choices, in which people go to hell, which means He specifically made people so that He could send them to hell, because He already knows what's going to happen. He already knows what they're going to do. He already knows the outcome of the game. He chose to send people to hell, created them, let them go to hell, all of his free will. What kind of God would do that? And so, like, that's something you already touched on. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, for lack of a better word, but like, that is a big part of it. Is it, if this God is real, what kind of God is it? And is it worth worshiping? And, people like to talk about like, oh, well, if you're godless, you might do these evil things. Atheists do these bad things. And evolution, it says, people have misunderstood evolution to believe these bad things. But all of those are unguided things by definition. Those are people who, by the admission of that argument, have no guidance and are guiding themselves down a bad path. Well, religious people are supposed to have that guidance. If this God is real, then he should be there providing the guidance, making sure that terrible things never happen in his name. And yet we have crusades, we have rampant sexual abuse in the church, we have the kind of abuse that was passed on to you at the most benign level. And at the most extreme level, we have genocide and war. And so at the end of the day, if this, if we're comparing beliefs and we're comparing philosophies and we're comparing who deserves praise and worship, I think the people who are willing to put in the work and face the scary reality of questioning this God and dealing with life without a parent looking over their shoulder at all times, telling them what to do, and can still manage to find morality, to be a good person, and to smile while they're doing it, those are the people who actually have something worth praising, something worth celebrating, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It was really God's actions in the Bible specifically and stuff like that that made me start questioning things in the first place. The idea that God was doing evil things is really the I don't want to say first crack, but I don't have a better word.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I'm sorry, Matt, were you going to say something?
No, I'm just saying I get it. The first crack in the wall and the dam.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good enough analogy.
Yeah, that's it. It was the first crack, and then I kept looking, and I was trying to find evidence, and it was right there in the book.
I'll tell you what, Thomas, my apologies. I've got other callers and other theistic callers I want to make sure we get to. Don't forget about recoveringfromreligion.org. And feel free to call back in if you have other questions and everything else. But look, work on forgiving yourself, letting go, moving forward, being the best person that you can be, and learning enough. First of all, live your life. You're not beholden to anybody else. You don't have to become the next atheist speaker but you could figure out what you want to do, where you want to go, and live the one and only life that you know you're going to get. And if it turns out evidence comes along that some God is real, pretty sure we'll all hear about it. Like the instant there is reliable scientific evidence, or a change in the historic evidence, or a change in evidentiary standards such that we can accept some sort of supernatural claims, the whole world will know about it. And you're not going to be able to avoid it. And if that's the case, and we know that's not the case today, that hasn't happened today, fucking live your life and join all the rest of us that are trying to live ours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, Forrest. Thank you to everybody in chat as well. I've been reading their messages. They're being very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Take care.
Of course. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Bye.
You too.
How could I not have a good rest of my day after talking with Thomas?
I see a couple of calls in the chat or in the queue that I think could make you have not a good day. But like, that's just me. I don't know. Just knowing you and knowing these things. But honestly, Thomas is great, dude. I'm very happy that he called in. And like I've heard so many calls who are exactly where he is, that have called me a week, a month later as an atheist and said, they're so happy that they're free, and how amazingly comfortable they are now that they've cast off those chains of shame and fear and doubt, and that they are living authentically for the first time and being beautiful in their sinful life, I joke, but someone is going to clip that and say, see. But like the honestly, like that is so refreshing and so cool. And I really, really, really wish the best for Thomas. I think he's going to be just fine if he keeps just being as honest and as kind and compassionate as he was in that call.
Yeah. And it's, all right. Let me make a quick announcement. We got more Theists callers coming up. We're going to be going to John here in just a minute or so. This is the Sunday show after dark. It's me and Forrest today, but tomorrow we have another show because this network does a lot of shows and their call-in shows. Skeptalk is on at 6 p.m. Central. We'll have John Gleason and Paul Enns tomorrow. On the 24th, which is Tuesday, Chewed Gum will also be at 6 p.m. with Eve and Alyssa. There will not be an episode of The Hang Up with me this Wednesday, but Jimmy may well do something or somebody else may do something. We had to postpone because on Wednesday I'm flying out for a little dental work. On the 26th is Transatlantic Call-In Show with Josie and Alexander. Is that, Arden, is that still at 2 p.m. or did we move it entirely to 6?
Yep, 2 p.m. this week.
Okay, so TACIS is at 2 p.m. By the way, this is a great opportunity to talk about the Transatlantic Call-In Show. For those of you who are already familiar with the network, we do Transatlantic Call-In Show at 2 p.m. Central Time, but last week we had to shift it to 6 p.m. And 6 p.m. puts it in line with a lot of the other shows. You could be very helpful, and maybe somebody could put a poll up on what, or maybe there's a way to check in online. I'm probably creating work for Jimmy and Arden, and they're going to be like, why the fuck does he do this? Giving us feedback on when your best times to watch. If you're watching live, if you're not watching live and you're catching up with everything the next day or whatever else, cool. That's great. But if you're a live watcher who's actually participating, let us know what times you would like to be around to watch stuff live. And if you're free all the time and you're at every one of the shows, you don't have to message us. We already know you. We love you.
Then get a job. I also, while we're making announcements, if it's okay, I do want to throw out that, like, during that call especially, we had a ton of people getting like muted and banned in chat because they were just proselytizing and just saying like Jesus is the thing and you guys don't exist without the God stuff and the blurb. Like, you have a chance to scream into the void and talk to nobody in the chat and then immediately get muted and no one's going to ever care what you say. Or there's a phone number on the bottom of the screen and you could actually like get on stage with us and defend your beliefs. And maybe you'll convince somebody. Thousands of people watch this show. You could make a really good argument. Or you could just keep talking to nobody in the chat and then feel big and powerful and martyred because somebody may have muted you because you weren't saying anything useful or welcome here. Like, you have a chance. You could call in. Lines are full at this moment, but every time we take a call, new one opens up. So
there's over 2,000 people watching live right now, and over the next few weeks or so, this is your chance to proselytize. But chat, as Forrest was saying, is not the place to do that. So if you're ready,
it's not going to work out for you.
You ready to go on to John?
So ready.
John in Ohio, pronouns he, him, is a theist who's calling in to explain that faith is necessary for morality. How are you, John?
Yikes.
Hey, I'm good. Good to talk to you again. It's been a while, Matt. Hi.
Yeah. So how are you defining morality and, if you don't mind, faith?
Well, I'm fine with talking about that, but, just this like occurred to me just because Forrest is a biologist, and I can I ask a different question regarding basically just like Christ as like a meme?
Christ is a what?
Christ as a meme.
Right.
A meme.
Yeah.
So I am John, I'm going to stop talking because I'm genuinely confused. I thought we were going to talk about faith being necessary for morality. And then you said, because Forrest is into biology, I want to talk to him about Christ as a meme. I don't know what the hell that has to do with biology. So I'm going to sit back and listen.
Memes are a biological term sometimes. But
I know memes.
Yeah.
So Richard Dawkins coined the term meme, but it's about a concept that propagates in the way that a gene would. But I don't know. Right. I don't think memes aren't a part of biology.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Is that like I'm pretty sure it came from that. But who knows? What maybe it'll be something totally different. I'm gonna go ahead and take a guess and say, John, what you're talking about is that Christ is just a fashionable way to frame pre-existing moral ideas and arguments, and that meme. But what you mean by meme is that Christianity is just this new trend in a morality that was already set up by whatever other god or something like that. Is that what you're going for? That was just my guess by that. What do you mean?
No, not. I mean, that's interesting, but no, not quite.
Okay.
Basically, like, okay, have you heard of have you seen Dennis Noble's new work where he talks about how microtubules,
Nope.
edit basically with epigenetics?
No, I haven't. I'm familiar with epigenetics, but I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, my sense is that I would actually want to know what you think about this. Is that like we have the ability to be way more sensitive to our environment to edit our own genes. Basically, they found a mechanism in microtubules that when you go out and experience new things in your life, like your body will edit your germline to pass on characteristics into the next gene, and the next generation. And what I find about that is really interesting is that plus some other things seem to explain the unpredictable or the rapid evolution in humans, basically, because that's kind of like, well, how do humans develop so rapidly? You know what I mean? With I think it's like twice brain size in 2 million years or something. Like it's pretty ridiculous.
I would have to look into what you're saying. I don't know what the cytoskeleton has to do with any of that. I don't know how microtubules are possibly going to play into that effect. But yes, transgenerational epigenetic inheritance is a thing. And so yes, individual experiences and things factoring into an individual's life can create epigenetic changes, which can be either intergenerational, meaning that they're passed on just for 2 generations, 1 to 2 generations, or they can be transgenerational, meaning that they are more or less permanent and pass on for multiple for several, dozens, if not more, generations. And yes, that does fill in a lot of the blanks, not just about human evolution, but that also explains a lot of the problems with the time scale of evolution in general, because we can switch genes on and off. We can make them overexpress, underexpress, not express whatsoever, based on the methylation, acetylation, ubiquitination, whatever that happens as a result of a myriad of environmental factors. So yes, that is something that I'm familiar with. And yes, it answers a lot of questions. I don't know the person you're talking about, nor do I know the specific work you're talking about, nor do I know how microtubules play into that in any meaningful way.
No, that's fine. And I think what's really interesting is that I've heard people I don't know, maybe this is me actually, but write off epigenetics and well, that's just so slow. But it's not slow. In my opinion, it's just optimized. If you have one generation where the sun is blacked out because of some cosmic weird phenomenon, you don't want to have I don't know, drastic changes because of what one generation was experiencing. So it has to be basically something persistent. But anyway, I guess I was going to jump from that, and this is going to kind of crazy, but when you think about that and the way that sexual selection works with what you admire, that people basically become what they admire and become
John.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know I said I was going to listen. What does this have to do with Jesus and a Jesus meme and religion?
Okay. Well, so you mentioned before that mutation is random. You mentioned that in the last podcast, Forrest. I tried to get on last time, my microphone wasn't working. But selection is not random, and I'm saying that selection is non-randomly selecting for. Essentially, you could just call it in brief terms the hero pattern. People have always, or atheists mention often that even before Christ, there was lots of other patterns of worshiping the hero that gives the Iron Man archetype, that gives up his life for the community and even dies.
A lot of the stories that Christianity stole from, yes.
Yeah, it depends on the way you see it. I see it as this is a story that's been worshipped forever, and it's in our bodies. Even a slime mold knows it has to go through salt for food. He can learn that very fast. And it manifested one time perfectly in history with a real person, and then people just went batshit crazy for 1,000 years, basically.
We do the exact same thing today. If you see pretty much any time in a literature or a video game, if someone has the initials JC or the last name Shepherd, they're probably going to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. It's just it's a literary meme. It is a thing that is involved in a lot of storytelling and a lot of literature and a lot of video games, a lot of movies, a lot of all sorts of stuff. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
the
And it makes
archetype,
money too, because
the self-sacrificing archetype. Yeah, it makes money for a lot of
I,
reasons. So, like, is that what you're saying? Is that Jesus is just the newest iteration of that story, that
no, I'm
archetypal
saying
character?
I'm saying that the universe is actually physically selecting for that pattern, and we think that pattern is
I'm
beautiful
still
because
wondering what the hell this has to do with my question and religion and things that are relevant to the show. If you just want to have a general biological discussion with Forrest, Skeptalk on a day that he's on there might be a better shot for it. But this is the Sunday show
Well,
after
no,
dark.
the last thing
What
he
did I
just
miss?
said there, I think the last thing he just said was that the universe is selecting for people who behave that way. And that I don't understand. Are you saying like that's a
Okay.
natural selection thing? Or are you saying the actual are you literally saying the universe is doing
well, I mean, I was using secular terms, but I mean, I would say God, really. I mean, because like it's funny because sometimes you refer to God as a her, and if we're talking
Yeah.
about the Christian Bible, like even this with like a lot of different cultures, there's a reason why gods are men or women. Like, farming cultures tend to worship the earth and Gaia and worship the understanding of like cycles and like understand that like, what I mean, the earth is like this fertile place where anything can come out of it. And this is actually in the Greek creation myth.
I'm sorry.
We have
Sorry, John. I just want to get you back here. Are you saying that self-sacrificing behavior has an evolutionary component to it, or are you saying that there is a God that is that the God that you believe in is selecting for people who are self-sacrificing and wants more people to be self-sacrificing, like Jesus and all the other myths that are self-sacrificing?
I'm saying the logic of the universe selects for that pattern. Yeah.
So evolution. You're saying that's an evolutionary trait. And yes, altruism is an evolutionary trait.
Type of evolution.
Yes, it's called group selection. You're selecting for the group of organisms rather than one individual phenotype. Even if that one individual dies, having that ability to self-sacrifice to protect your group is still beneficial in a specific kind of population. Bacteria do it. So like,
and I wouldn't even say that necessarily.
You can Google the evolution of altruism. And I think it's really important to note that altruistic behavior, self-sacrificing behavior, is not a human thing. It is not even an animal thing. Lots of species do it, and we have clear stages of evolution. The same way we talk about like the evolution of the eye. It's not just a perfect eyeball pops up out of nowhere. We have gradients from simple photosensitive cells to a larger patch, to a cup-shaped patch, to something with a pinhole camera, to something with a lens, to something with ciliary muscles that stretch and form that lens, all the way up to the eye that we have today. Similarly, with moral behavior and altruistic behavior, we have clear gradia all throughout nature of different types of morality, different types of self-sacrifice, different types of cause and effect that benefits somebody other than yourself, hurts you. There's actually a formula that was proposed a while ago. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's that the cost of the fitness cost of being altruistic as opposed to the fitness gain of having altruism done to you, something being greater than zero. I can go pull up the paper later, but it doesn't matter. The point is, it goes back to the thing you called into originally before we changed topics weirdly. Faith is not necessary for morality. Morality and self-sacrifice are evolutionary traits that we can observe across a bunch of different species, and we actually have statistical models for. It's an evolution thing. It's not a faith thing.
Can also...
You're preaching to the choir. Can I interject one more?
No,
I want to hear what Matt says.
I can also justify altruism from a purely selfish beginning. If I were truly, completely selfish, like my primary thing is what's going to make Matt survive best, or what make Matt's life or the concept surrounding Matt best. You can justify altruism with that, because what people view as altruistic, this sort of, they sacrificed something without any potential benefit to themselves. The mere fact that somebody noticed it and thinks that it was done without benefit is a benefit in the social game as well. The basics of game theory suggest cooperation, but also may point to self-sacrifice either partially or fully in a number of situations, which is why what Forrest was saying about other species engaging in this, it's not like there's I don't know where faith comes into it, because honestly we're so far afield of where I thought we were starting. I'll just stop and John can go again.
I also, before we continue, just to follow up on what I said, we talked about the evolution of morality when I was on with Erika this last Monday, and so I actually just happened to have that paper that I was talking about in the other room. That's why it is on top of my head. This is from they're citing Hamilton, 1964, which is a really simple way to talk about altruism as being favored by selection in terms of inclusive fitness. There's different types of fitness, direct, indirect, but inclusive fitness is like fitness cost or fitness benefit for everybody, including the individual and their population, their immediate society. And that's R times B minus C is greater than 0. So C is the fitness cost of the actor, B is the fitness benefit to the recipient, and R is the genetic relatedness between the actor and the recipient. So you multiply the degree to which the two things are related by the benefit that is gained from the altruistic behavior minus the cost, the fitness cost to the actor. Remember, both B and C can be either positive or negative integers. And if the resulting number is greater than 0, then it's logical that there would be selection pressure for that thing that would be selected for. So yeah, like I said, there's literally like statistical analysis on the evolution of altruism and like how it works and how it's beneficial to people, to populations, not just animals, or not just humans, and not even just animals. Altruism is an evolutionary trait. You do not need faith for morality. And indeed, faith hinders and gets in the way of morality a lot.
Although, and I'm sorry, John, I'll stop right here. I'll stop right here, John. We still never got around to defining faith or morality. So I want to make sure we're not talking past each other, but please continue. I just want to make that point for the audience that we're still aware, yes, we didn't do that.
Yep.
No, I mean, we can jump into that now. I don't know. This is something I just wanted to, like, I guess, find if we kind of found common ground about this part. Because I think I would imagine that we would, I guess. But also, I'm curious about, so it's not just about even a group selection, that's right, but it also leads to increase of group. You know what I mean? It's more about propagation, I guess. You know what I mean? So it's about, well, it leads to the system growing, I guess. But further, I just want to say, and the reason why I brought up the idea of memes at the beginning, and the idea that, well, your germline, that your body is actually editing your germline, and in a way, if memes are controlling you, that, like, if you sacrifice yourself and don't have any kids, in a way, natural selection will still select for you. Does that make any sense? You know what I'm saying?
I don't know that I followed it. Can you say just one more time?
Like, if you're like in a tribe, and then you are like a really admirable hero, and you give up your life to a cause, and you don't have any kids, but everyone is like, wow, that person is so admirable, I would become like him. Do you think that, like, over the long run, your germline could be editing your morphology, I don't know if that's the right to put it, but like your way of being to be more like that person? And so a way it's like that person's genetic material is spreading over with like the highest level of memes first coming down and then shaping the matter, basically.
I want to make sure that I'm understanding this, because you keep saying memes and it drives me fucking crazy. But are you suggesting that natural selection for the person who's childless and sacrifices themselves is actually selecting for the propagation of their gut biome and stuff like that?
I don't think they're gut biome. I think it'd be like a much larger principles than that.
Are you saying that even if the person who is childless and altruistic is by definition not passing on their DNA, and yet their actions will influence the people around them to make them behave more like them, and therefore you'll have a cultural change to be more altruistic, even without the DNA, you still have a population change? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that also culture edits genes, though. You know what I mean?
It can, not in that way specifically.
I think it's optimized too, which means it's optimized very, very slowly. But you know what I mean? I still think it's optimized too, I guess. I don't know. But no, it definitely is. I mean, as far as like, if you have like, you can even think about it this way: if you have a group of people that's like, okay, we're going to be the warrior tribe, you know what I mean? Like, we're just going to like, push everyone over and then take everything we can. It's like, well, what's going to happen is in a few generations, like the people who are really rewarded in that tribe are going to be the big, muscular, like, I'm going to fuck you up. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like,
I'm going to be honest with you. It sounds like you're just talking about cultural evolution. I'm not entirely sure how this gets back to DNA. I'm not entirely sure how this has anything to do with faith being required for morality. I don't know where you're going with this. And
but also, when I asked a question, when I asked a question that was specifically tied to finding a biological living component that natural selection could be acting on, you tossed that aside and went to something that's not a biological component, as if it's selecting for that. And you were just like, oh, something bigger.
Well, I mean, in the case of the
John, we don't even have to have a hypothetical. I don't have any
kids.
No, I'm not giving. Listen, I don't have any kids. I'm not passing on my genes, but I'm not the sole thing that I care about. But even if I was, I have to recognize I have a brother, I have parents, I have cousins, I have a partner, I have people that I care about. And doing things for them, for the people who are biologically related to me, will still allow some of my genes to continue. So even in the sense that I don't pass on my genes directly, acting to support those people who are near kin to me is still supporting passing on my genes.
I see that as a very troubling moral framework.
Hang on.
You know what I mean?
John, I didn't say that it was a fucking moral framework.
Okay. No, but I
think it was Haldane who mentioned like exactly what Matt is saying. He was talking about like altruism as like a function of DNA preservation, of passing on your genes and everything. And he was like, I'll die for 2 brothers or 8 cousins or something like that. And it's like the amount of your actual genetic material that is still surviving you.
1 child, so like 2 brothers, 8 cousins,
yeah. And so like that kind of thing. Like I think that was Haldane, but like that that's just, I don't know, man. There's actually research into what you're talking about. I can talk about a little bit of it, but I don't know where we're going with this. I don't know how this means that faith is necessary for morality. I don't think that this means that morality is divinely inspired. All this continues to say, we're talking about the details of how morality evolves, which I'm fine to talk about, but this isn't really the show for it. And I don't think that faith is useful in this way at all. So I don't know where we're going with this. I don't know what the point of this call is.
Okay, well, I can just jump straight to the faith morality thing. Like,
yes, please.
What's
here we are 20 minutes after we started, and you're finally going to get to the subject that you called in about.
Well, to be fair, when I first called in, I said, can I kind of change the subject a little bit? Like,
I know what you said, but you changed it to a subject that was, I don't see how any of the discussion prior to right now is remotely relevant to the subject you called in about. So part of me is saying, okay, finally, we're going to get to something that's relevant to the show. And another part of me is like, we've already been on for 20 minutes with this guy. Have him call back another day if he wants to do multiple topics, because now we're being fucking rude to everybody else who's on hold.
Okay, well, can I finish up? Just the reason why I was bringing up this topic and why I think it has to relate to religion, because like ancient people and me too, frankly, honestly, think that like mind, consciousness, memes, all that is related to heaven, and that heaven is shaping Earth, basically.
Okay.
Is there any evidence is there any evidence to support that? Because right now, what you just said was ancient people used to have beliefs and I share them.
Right. That's I don't know what that's to do with anything.
The fact is, I mean, genes are less fundamental as you would think, and that's why I was getting at the idea that culture which is shaped by minds and individuals and ideas.
John,
John,
I promise you I'm completely fucking unimpressed with you going on in a whole bunch of side things and tossing out stuff. What is the evidence for the thing you believe? What do you believe and why do you believe it? It's all I give a fuck about. What do you believe? Why do you believe it?
About which thing? I believe a lot of things, mate.
The
about
thing
what
you
just
said
dude.
that ancient people said, you said ancient people believe this and you believe it. Tell us what it is they believed and why you believe it and why you think anybody should believe it. Or I'm done.
That heaven shapes earth.
What is heaven?
Why do you believe that?
And how does heaven shape earth? And what is the evidence for that belief?
Saying that heaven is associated with mind and consciousness and all that.
No, stop, John. John,
how do you
don't tell me what it's don't tell me what it's associated with. Tell me what it is and how you know.
I don't know what consciousness is, man. Ideas. Like,
I didn't say, John.
I don't know
shut up.
John,
I
just
didn't
answer
say
what he's
anything,
saying, dude.
Didn't say anything about consciousness, not fucking once. I asked you to defend this notion about heaven, and I asked what heaven is, and you didn't tell us.
I said heaven is mind, consciousness, everything that's not material.
What does that mean? The mind.
This is
okay.
some like absolute
you can't grab
garbage,
incorporeal
fucking word salad shit,
dude. What about fire? What about fire? Fire is a chemical process. No, it's not. It's a chemical process. It's an ongoing reaction.
Fine.
You can't go get a tablespoon of fire, right? It's an ongoing chemical reaction. Similarly, life and consciousness is a series of chemical reactions. It is built upon material things that are doing something. It's an emergent property of material actions. So just because it isn't corporeal, just because it isn't something tangible that you can go take a tablespoon of consciousness, doesn't mean that it isn't real, doesn't mean that it isn't tied to physical reality, doesn't mean that it's magical. So I don't understand what you're talking about when you say that heaven, I don't understand what you're talking about when you say that heaven is mind and heaven is untangible or whatever like that. That doesn't say anything to me. I can say that. Go ahead.
I already have some understanding of mind. Information. I have some understanding of mind. What does calling mind heaven add?
I'm saying if you understand, if you do that,
what does calling mind heaven add?
An understanding of the Bible that's more accurate to what people actually believed what they were writing it?
No, John. Saying that the mind is heaven does not in any way improve anybody's understanding of the Bible. What does calling mind heaven add to the concept of mind?
What does add to I wasn't adding to the concept of mind.
You said heaven is mind. I already understand what mind is to some extent. I'm asking you what heaven is. And if you say heaven is mind, shut up! If you say heaven is mind, that's like saying A equals 5. Well, if I already know what 5 is, what does labeling 5A add to my understanding of 5? So what does labeling mind heaven add to the understanding?
What?
What does labeling mind heaven add to our understanding of mind? If I have to ask you one more fucking time, I will drop you. And I seem to be frozen on Phoenix. Now it's better.
No, it was a good screenshot, though. It was good.
Well, I'm saying that one, that mind shapes matter was the first part of my argument. And then second, if you read the Bible with the understanding, more sense.
John?
It doesn't, though. It doesn't, though.
Here's mind.
Okay.
You're calling mind heaven. What does that add to our understanding of mind? What does labeling it heaven add to our understanding of mind? Last fucking chance.
That's not the claim. I wasn't trying to make that claim that it had something to the concept.
Did you say heaven is mind?
I said that ancient people, when they refer to heaven, they're talking about
heaven is mind. That's a yes or no. Did you say heaven is mind? Yes or fucking no? Why are you being so obstinate with me, John? Answer the fucking question.
I did not say those words.
Goodbye, you liar.
I'm 99% sure he did.
Heaven is mind and consciousness. Go back and rewind. I wrote it down as he was saying it. I don't understand. You guys can have a long conversation that doesn't really get to the point of anything that's on the show, but is maybe laying some groundwork, and it could be good groundwork. And then when I say, what is it that you believe and why do you believe it? John turns into a blubbering buffoon who just wants to interrupt and say a bunch of, well, heaven is mind and consciousness, and it enlightens us to the true meaning of the Bible. No, first of all,
what is any of that, you know?
Yeah. If mind, which is the label for what we put on, generally speaking, what a brain does, but we don't have a full understanding of consciousness. We don't have a full understanding of mind. And when you say heaven is mind, that is meaningless to me. And so I need you to explain. Like if I say, time is money. Well, we both know time isn't actually money. But what I mean when I say that is that the period that we spend, a period of time that we spend doing stuff results in money. And so, okay, that's just a saying. But if I said heaven is money, does that mean that the concept, first of all, what is the heaven concept adding to money? It may, in John's mind, it adds something. Otherwise, there's no reason to just say anything other than money. If you and I, if we want to talk about mind, we talk about mind. At no point in a conversation about mind amongst philosophers would someone say, well, I think heaven is what the brain produces. And by heaven, I mean mind.
Also, at the end of that, you said that the mind's influence matter or something like that. It sounded like he was trying to turn into idealism, which, holy fuck, I've had enough of that after the past couple of conversations I had with that other guy. But like, it's very weird, and like it is frustrating. I think the first thing you said is really what's sticking out to me is that we had, for some fucking reason, a 20-minute not even conversation, just this weird back and forth about like, well, you could have morality from a naturalistic perspective. Yes, we do, but you could do that. Yes, yes, that is true. And you could have like an epigenetic thing in there. Sure, why not? Yeah, but you could do it. Yes, I understand. That's true in a lot of cases. Yes, so that's heaven, and heaven is mine. What? Like there was no setup. There was no reason for that 20-minute discussion, setting up nothing, just to then all of a sudden, whenever you have to describe what you're actually believing in, we can't get a straight answer. We can't say anything meaningful. We can't talk about any so what a fucking waste of time. So weird. So weird. Dude was on hold for a long time too, to say nothing. I don't understand.
It's so wild because all I want to know is tell me what you believe and why you believe it. And if it turns out that your reasons for believing something are unique to you, like I believe there's a God because God has privately revealed itself to me. Okay, don't call in with that. Although I'm happy to have that discussion because I want to know how people who think like that have confirmed that it was actually God revealing itself to them and not just their mind doing something. But
yeah,
what I really want is for people to call in and say, here's what I believe. There's a being that created the universe and still exists and governs the universe, exists separately from it, but works with it. And here's why you, Matt, and you, Forrest, should also accept this. Here is the argument supported by compelling evidence that shows why this is reasonable to accept. I have zero interest in John kind of marching down, and the number of times that he was like, well, ancient people believed this, or there's this, it's like there's some pop psychology and pop sociology. And when he's like, oh, Forrest is a biologist, I need to put this in biologist terms. Well, I'm not a biologist. And even if I were, I don't know that it would have made anything any clearer. Just tell me what you believe.
I'm also a person. Like I can understand what you're talking about. I can relate it to biology if I want to or need to. Like it's not necessary to like, and I still don't know what the fuck we're talking about with microtubules. I Googled that after you talked about it. I couldn't find what the hell he was saying. I couldn't find anything on. Maybe I'm not looking right. I didn't remember the name of the guy. I remember he said something Noble, I believe was the last name he gave, but I didn't find anything with that either. So like, I don't know what that's all about. I found a bunch of cool stuff about epigenetic factors which influence microtubule development, because that makes sense. But like, I don't know, man.
John was very close to making me make new rules, which is nope. If you told the call screener you're talking about this, then that's the only thing you get to talk about. But I don't want to make dumbass rules like that, because the conversation could have been anyway. Let's move on. We don't need to do an after call thing. We've got Mr. Ryan in Canada, who has no pronoun preference, is calling with evidence for the existence of God. So, ma'am, what have you got for us?
Hi, good evening, Forrest, and good evening, Matt. Thank you for taking my call.
I think I've talked to you recently, haven't I?
Yeah, I spoke with Forrest for the first time, I believe, last week.
What did you call about last time? Remind me.
We were speaking about evolution.
What specifically about evolution?
Well, we were speaking about how evolution is evidence for the existence of God.
I think I remember this call. Give me a minute, Matt. You go right ahead. I'm gonna look something up really quick.
Well, any case, no matter what you talked about last time, it says this time you're calling in to say you have evidence for the existence of God. Which God are we talking about, real quick, Ryan? Or sorry, Mr. Ryan.
I'm a follower. I'm a Christian, and I am a follower of Jesus Christ. He's my Lord and Savior.
Sure. So we might have to get back into the specific properties of the God that you're advocating for, but what sort of evidence do you have?
Well, I would like to argue that morality is the evidence for the existence of God.
Okay. How are you defining morality? Because if we don't agree, because to me, morality isn't something that exists, and the moral sense isn't in any way an indicator that there's a God. The fact that I have moral opinions about something means that I have views about right and wrong. So what morality are you talking about?
Yeah, that's the same morality I'm talking about. It's the understanding of the difference between right and wrong.
Okay. So is it the fact that we can understand the difference that is evidence for God, or the fact that there is a difference? What is it that's evidence for God?
Well, I'd like to argue that morality exists outside of the human species, and it exists within all life on Earth.
Okay. Morality, are you saying that because it's not a thing that exists, right? It's concepts.
No, morality definitely exists.
In what way?
Morality exists objectively in the same way that mathematics exists.
Okay.
Mathematics
doesn't exist. Mathematics doesn't exist either. Mathematics is conceptual. It is a description of facts.
The truth that is revealed by mathematics is independent of the math itself.
Which has nothing to do. No. Whatever truths may be revealed by using mathematics is independent of whether mathematics exists as a thing under itself. You seem to not be keen on the difference between conceptual things and physical things.
Well, they both exist.
No, the concepts don't exist as, like, for example, if I'm thinking of something, that concept doesn't exist. It's merely a brain state.
What it is it's the truth. It's the truth that exists.
I'm sorry, but now that we've gotten to this point, you're just saying what it is it's the truth. Well, the truth is also conceptual, and the truth does not exist.
The truth absolutely does exist.
How? Prove it.
Where is the truth?
Where is the truth? That's a concept. That's not a thing that exists. It's a concept. Where is the truth?
No.
Like if everything that exists you can point to, so point to the truth.
Sure, mathematical truth is truth, and it exists.
I'm sorry, you just made a completely circular claim and you didn't point to anything.
So are you trying to tell me the truth does not exist?
I already told you that. The truth is a label that we conceptually apply to things, to statements, concepts that are, we believe, are consistent with the facts of reality. But the truth does not exist as a thing.
It's like saying
the truth absolutely exists. Philosophical truth?
No, sir.
Philosophical truth exists and mathematical truth exists.
You can keep asserting it. You can keep asserting it, and you can increase it to absolutely. You can keep asserting it, and you can increase it absolutely.
Then how are we able to discover it if it doesn't exist?
You're fucking interrupting me.
Ryan.
Do I have to mute you while I'm fucking correcting this? You can assert that it's absolutely true as many times as you want. That doesn't change the fact that it does not exist as a thing, period.
Okay, so if it doesn't exist as a thing, how are we able to discover it?
Because it's
Does
a
a
concept.
species exist? Does a species exist?
Yes, species exist.
Okay, what's the definition of a species?
Species is a type of animal. A type of
So plants don't have
categorization of life on Earth.
Right, it's a categorization. There are a dozen or so different species concepts that all have different ways of defining and determining what a species is and what is or isn't part of any one species. A species is a categorization. That's a great answer. It's just a way to categorize life on Earth. A species does not exist. It's just a category that we put on things that are usually similar but not always. It's just a label. So that's what Matt is saying about truth. There is no thing called truth. There is no, you can't go get, to use the language I used in the last call, you can't go get a tablespoon of truth from the kitchen, right? There's no just thing called truth. Truth is a label that we apply to things that seem to most reasonably fit with our understanding of reality. People have different versions of truth about the same things. That it's just the label that we're using. So for you to say there is the truth out there, I understand what you might be trying to get at, but the issue that you're having here is one of language. That's what Matt's having an issue with, it seems.
But we can set that aside.
I looked up our last call as well, and I have a vague memory of where this is going, or what the last call was, which tells me about where this is going to go.
We can set that aside, and we can say, look, if morality is the label that we use for the concept of discerning right from wrong, I believe that I'm able to discern right from wrong somewhat reliably. Do you have any objection to me saying that?
No.
Okay. Does the fact that I can discern right from wrong somewhat reliably, does that point to there being a God?
Yes.
How?
Yeah.
Because you are able to discover truth that exists objectively within reality.
So, a couple of questions here. Number one, like I said, I looked up our last conversation. You were saying that evolution is the mechanism by which God created us as the perfect individuals. And then immediately at the end of the call, you said that we actually weren't perfect. We were just the next step in evolution, and that the next thing that God makes out of us will actually be the perfect thing. It sounds like where you're going with this is that there's this objective morality out there.
Forrest, you're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say those things.
I was summarizing. I wasn't saying you said exactly those things. I was summarizing.
No. You're not saying what I was saying in the last call. You're saying something completely different. You misinterpreted.
Okay.
So what I heard from the last call
what I said is that
you were saying, I'm going to reiterate, and then you can correct me if you want, but it's really not the point. What I heard from the last call, and again, I don't remember it very well. It was a little while ago. I do a bunch of these shows. I just went and looked it up and kind of listened to 30 seconds of it, was that you were saying that evolution is the way that God created us, that God drove evolution, or that God guided evolution in some way, or that God used evolution as a tool. Whether or not they were directly responsible for it or actually played a hand in it, who knows? The point is, you said that evolution was on purpose. It was God's plan. And that the end result was us. And I remember Aaron and I having a grump about that and saying, what about all the other species of humans? What about all the humans before us? What about all the humans before the 2,000 years ago when a man was sacrificed in a hideous way to teach us morals somehow? What about all those things? And you were like, yeah, that's just part of the game, dude. They played their role. They served their purpose, which was getting us to where humanity is today. That's what I remember from the call. And I'm 99% sure that at the end of that call, you also said that we were still imperfect. We were still just a project that God was continuing to develop. That's what I remember from the call. Again, it's not super important to what I was going to say next. I was just putting context in. Is that at least half-assed assumption or summary of what you said good enough for you?
No, the point that I was trying to make is that we have concrete evidence that there is intelligence greater than ourselves.
Okay, that's not what the call was about, but we'll get there, I guess. The point is, what I'm saying right now is that it sounds like you're making the same kind of assertion, which is that humans have XYZ characteristic. And that, if we take it from a naturalistic standpoint, is too incredible to say is a completely unguided or unprincipled or uncontrolled process. Therefore, it points to a higher power, some sort of intelligence, making us be that way. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like the same kind of situation that you were talking about in the last call. Is that actually what you're saying or not?
No, you must have a mind block or something. Like, I'm telling you stuff and you're hearing something completely different.
Stop. Let's get back to today's call and the question that we just sorted out.
That's what today's call is. That's what I'm trying to assert, is that, like, it sounds like you're saying that humans having some sort of morality is evidence of God, because what I just said, humans having XYZ characteristic, in this case morality, is something that couldn't be totally natural and unguided. It is something that must have divine inspiration. That's what it sounds like you're driving to. That isn't what you've said yet. That sounds like where you're going. Is that or is that not where you're going?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that morality exists objectively, and we discover it just in the same way that we discover the truth regarding mathematics.
Okay. So I asked you, how does my ability to tell the difference between right and wrong point to a God? And your answer was, quote, because you're able to discover truth that exists objectively in reality. That is neither an argument nor an evidence. It's an assertion. I have two quick questions. Does my ability to do math correctly point to a God?
Yes, it does. It points to your ability to observe truth as it exists in the universe.
It's a yes or no question. I told you I had a couple of questions. Let me get to them. Does my ability to design a card trick point to the existence of a God?
Matt, I think you need to take a couple of deep breaths, my friend. You're getting like worked up here, man.
Dude.
Forrest, can I?
By all means.
Mr. Ryan, I'm sitting here asking you specific questions to try to get to something useful in your absolutely garbage assertion pile. And you've decided to tell me
you
that
don't
I need
understand
to take
morality. That's why you treat people like shit.
Fucking pie hole. Goodbye, Mr. Ryan. Welcome to ban.
Just like it's
unbelievable.
The idea that morality is a subjective thing, assuming that's true. If morality is a subjective, ethereal thing, and us being able to access it is evidence of a God, am I crazy? That would be exactly what I asked him. Is it that humans have this characteristic, and that's therefore evidence that can't happen naturally? We're able to connect to God because we're connecting to this thing. That's what I was fucking asking him. Like, oh my glob, dude.
This is so fucking wild because, so first of all, there's a difference between the physical and the conceptual. And my view is that while to the extent that a concept exists, it exists as nothing other than a particular brain state. For example, if all the minds in the universe went away, all the concepts would cease to exist. The things that they might point to, the true things that happen, like if I have a concept of this pair of glasses, the glasses don't cease to exist because they're the physical thing. But if you remove my mind, the concept of these glasses is gone. If you remove all minds, there's no concepts left. And so if you're going to say that the existence of something points to a God, we really need to get to how does the existence, and I'll kind of air quotes that, how does the existence of a concept as a brain state point to a God? Well, it's not the concept that points to a God, but Mr. Ryan doesn't understand that at all. It is the thing the concept is labeling. If you have a math concept that 1 + 1 = 2, it's not the concept that points to something. It is the actual math truth that he's trying to do. So if we're able to identify that something is true, if my ability to do math correctly points to a God and my ability to design a card trick points, well, he didn't answer that one. That's when he told me I needed to take a breath because I had two questions.
Yeah, because that would have poked a hole in his idea. Yeah, it couldn't.
Yeah. The notion, the thing that Mr. Ryan doesn't understand, well, sorry, I didn't mean to start a 4-hour show on all the things that Mr. Ryan doesn't understand, like how to not interrupt when I'm asking questions to try to get to the core of this. But he says we have concrete evidence of an intelligence greater than ours. I would have loved to have gotten that, because what he was presenting was not at all concrete evidence of anything. So where's the concrete evidence of an intelligence greater than ourselves? And this is critical. Let's assume that Forrest and I both agree right now, there's an intelligence greater than us, greater than any human. Does that make it a God? I don't see how you got to this is evidence of a God.
It's one of those things where, like, I don't know if it's fair to call it presuppositionalism, but like I feel like it dances with it, where it's this idea that the belief in not just any God, but their specific idea of a God, is just like the natural null hypothesis, that it is just an assumed possibility. And all other ideas just it's kind of the same thing as like when you have people like creationists and they're like, okay, well, if I can disprove this one thing about evolution, then it must be the biblical creation story is the only other alternative, as if that isn't 50,000 assumptions leading into. Even if you throw out evolution entirely, you have your work cut out for you. You have not proved anything. You've just shown that this one idea doesn't work. And it sounds like this thing of like, well, we have morality. Well, we can do whatever thing that humans can do. Well, whatever. Therefore, it's not just that some guy did it, which is a big claim in itself. It's this specific kind of guy, and he has this name, and he cares about whether or not you masturbate, and he comes from, you can read about him in this book, and like it's all these add-ons as if that's just the next thing that's logical to assume. And it's just, I don't understand how that connects to people. It's like, well, it's either this or that. Like, no, there's a million options on that side of the table.
It's not necessarily presuppositionalism properly, but it's like you're right that there's a presuppositionalist foundation here in some sense, in that he's arguing that the presence, the very concept of truth, the presence of truth, requires a grounding in a God, essentially, even if that's not what he's saying. Because if he's like, oh, the ability to do math correctly points to a God, he's going to say that God, well, I don't get to say what he's necessarily going to say, because I don't think he understands the presuppositionalist stuff that much. But the presuppositionalists are basically saying we need a grounding for morality, or we need a grounding for logic, and the atheistic worldview can't provide that. But the theistic worldview can, because God can serve as a grounding for logic and a grounding for morality. And that's wrong for all kinds of reasons, not the least of which is, I don't see why you need a grounding for logic or a grounding for morality beyond, what we're able to actually address. But in either case, there's no demonstration that the grounding for either of those is necessarily a God or their God or anything else. It is an assumption somebody makes, because philosophically speaking, we don't have an explanation. We can't confirm that reason is reliable, that logic is reliable beyond our ability to test it. We can't prove that it's inviolate everywhere, all the time, in all places, in all ways, that it's absolute. And so, but we operate as if it is. Similarly, we when we look at the universe, despite the fact that we are limited in how far away we can explore, we presume, possibly falsely, that physics works the same way on the other side of the galaxy, or 10 galaxies away, or 75 million galaxies away as it does here. And we assume that uniformity because once you figure out how something works, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You use that model and understanding and keep showing where it works until you find the spot where it doesn't work. And that's where we're getting with a number of just different theoretical physics concepts okay, maybe physics works differently in a different part of the universe. Maybe time works differently. We don't know. But we begin by assuming that uniformity. Somebody pointed out or tried to suggest the other day that if I can't tell you why logic works, then I don't get to object to you misusing it. And that's completely false because, first of all, you also can't tell me why logic works. You can just assert that you have a supernatural magical friend that serves as a grounding for logic, but that's not proof that he's there. But the truth is, I don't have to know how an internal combustion engine works to know whether or not my truck is working. And if my truck is working and yours breaks down on the side of the road, I don't have to know how either of them work to know that yours is broken. I don't have to know what's broken there. All I know is that you can step into my truck and I will drive you down to a service station so you can get somebody to come back and fix yours. But if you don't want to get in my truck, which you know fucking works because you think I don't know how an internal combustion engine works, you can walk.
Wait for the super honest creationist to clip that and say, just because you don't know how God made humans doesn't mean it didn't.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it didn't, but just because I don't know how it doesn't mean it did.
I'm just saying, I've been chronically online for so long, it all comes together. Also, take a look at line number 1, call number 39, woof in all directions.
Yeah, we'll be getting there in a minute. Kay, pronouns they, them in somewhere in the USA, has a question about what are they without a soul? So welcome, Kay. How are you?
Hi. I'm doing good, thank you. Gosh, there's so much I want to say. I do want to start with thank you to both of you for the work you do here. I've been watching this channel for a good bit. I come from a Southern Baptist background, and I've been deconstructing for a while now. I've rejected the God of the Christian Bible now that I've actually read its content and heard the arguments against it. But there is one thing that's holding me back from rejecting like all religion or spirituality or whatever as a whole. And it's the idea of a soul.
Okay.
So today I guess I want to make the argument for the existence of a soul. And I want to be thorough. So first I want to define what I mean when I say soul. Because I feel like there's a lot of disagreement on that. Like there's a lot of vagueness that comes with that because of different religious beliefs. But scientifically, we often use the words like consciousness or mind, and theistic perspectives tend to use the word soul to kind of mean the same thing, I think. But because
I wouldn't say that science has a concept of what religion calls the soul. So, for example, every characteristic that's been attributed to a soul falls into one of two different buckets. It's either an identifiable function of a brain, or it's not identifiably real. What property of a soul can you point to or identify?
Well, I feel like that kind of like the word soul has a lot of baggage to it because of those beliefs. But like if we take all that away, like the different.
Do you believe in a soul, or are you arguing for a soul that survives death?
I am not arguing for a soul that survives death or is immortal or anything like that.
Don't take this the wrong way, Kay, but if that's the case, then I don't care. Because the thing that's left is essentially metaphor about the human metaphorical spirit, something like that. If you're not arguing for something that survives death, then I guess I'll let you state what it is that you're advocating for, but I don't know what use the concept of a soul is if it doesn't survive death.
Okay. Well, here's what I've kind of written down to make sure I kind of phrase my argument right. If the soul does not exist, then what am I? If life is a property, then why am I a singular object? Like, I don't feel like consciousness quite does that concept justice. And I feel like there's something missing in there that the word soul does cover.
So can you distinguish for me between the word soul and the words consciousness, personality, mind, individuality, any of those things? Are those distinguishable things for you?
In my understanding, they are distinguishable. I don't know if I'm going to be able to put that into words so easily.
But
I guess
you don't
like
really have to.
Consciousness can be okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
We can say, I guess consciousness is like we can see a lot of things are conscious. We can say dogs are conscious, we say plants are not conscious. Humans are conscious, but we're kind of deemed to be conscious in a different way than most other things.
Why would you say that?
I guess maybe it's just the old ways of thinking from religion of humans are special and we have souls and animals don't. I don't know.
Oh, so for clarity, whatever you're describing as a soul, you think humans have it and other animals don't?
I would say there's no evidence because we can't talk to the animals, and I guess we really can't.
Well,
I guess that's kind of a bad
what
argument
evidence
right
is there that
but
we have it? I mean, this isn't just because you can't talk with just because you can't get animals to talk back, which is not even necessarily completely true. You're saying there's something special about humans that other animals don't have. Do you accept the model of evolution to explain the diversity of life?
So I do accept the model of evolution, but I'll be honest. I feel like that kind of gets away from the I guess argumental point I was trying to make.
I don't know how, because if your case is that humans possess something that you could describe as a soul, but other animals don't, then where in the evolutionary lineage did humans get a soul that other animals don't?
I don't know. And I'm not saying they don't, but
you did.
And I admit that's probably a flawed belief that I'm still holding on to.
Okay. So what is it?
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead, Forrest, because I don't know.
So a minute ago, I asked you, can you distinguish between consciousness and personality and all these things? And I think you made a good point, which is that, other animals have consciousness and they have personalities and things like that. But you think that humans are somehow special in this way, that we also have this additional thing, this extra soul thing. I have two questions for you. Number one is, if I were to lose my soul today, assuming that that's a possibility, I don't know if it is in your worldview. It doesn't really matter if it is or not. Just assuming that if I were to, misplace my soul this morning and I don't have one anymore, what would change about me? What would be the tangible, noticeable difference that you could tell is different about me because I don't have a soul anymore?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that because I don't know. And
right.
There's something specifically about it that I can't get past.
It sounds
the idea that if life is property, then why am I an object? Like, my perspective is an object. If ship of Theseus argument, if you move every part of my brain piece by piece, where do I stop being me? Like,
right.
There's no cell or object in my body that is me. So I think that's where the soul comes in. It's the singular me that doesn't have a physical point of existence.
Consciousness is an emergent property. It's something that is the result of the total sum of the electrochemical activity of your brain. So like to say that, for example, water, oxygen and hydrogen, if you have two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom just laying around on the ground, they are not going to behave like water. When they are combined into a molecule together, they take on a particular shape, which gives them particular properties, which causes them to behave like water. They take on properties, new abilities that are greater than the sum of their individual parts. And when you get a lot of water molecules together and add a moon, you then get tides, which are a totally new thing that oxygen and hydrogen don't have by themselves. They don't have tides. They don't do that thing. But when you have all of these individual molecules together and also an extraplanetary body floating around, this natural satellite that's very big and very close, all of a sudden, you now get new properties that weren't there before, greater than the sum of the parts. Same thing goes on with your mind and your consciousness and your personality and all these things. Your personality isn't just a thing that exists by itself. I've said this exact thing 3 times in this show, and I'm sorry to keep saying it, but like you can't go get a tablespoon of mind or consciousness or personality or anything like that. It is unique to you because your brain is unique to you. Your life experiences are unique to you. Your ideas and the ways that your life has shaped your ideas and your outlook, your language, it shapes the way you see the world. All of these things are all unique as your fingerprint. And that sounds like what you're describing when you talk about the way you talk about a soul. It sounds like it's just that, your unique self, what makes you you, which lots of other non-human animals have. And I'll grant that like we have it in a really expanded way, but it sounds like the big hang up here, it isn't that we have this thing called a soul, isn't that we have evidence for this or that, because you've admitted that there's no evidence for these things is really hard. It sounds like the big hang up is that you feel, don't take this the wrong way, not special anymore, that you are now just an animal, that you are now just a collection of parts, that you are now just an object, a physical thing that happens to have some thoughts. And you're trapped on this concept of like, but I'm me, damn it. I'm not just a thing. I'm not just an object. I'm not just matter. I'm fucking special. And yeah, I think you're a special person. I think you're awesome because you're you. But that doesn't have anything to do with magic. And it certainly doesn't have anything to do with the soul. And if you admit that there's no good evidence for this thing, I don't understand why you're holding on to it beyond just the need to feel a little bit more special than the universe around you.
The reason I guess I'm having trouble letting go of that idea is because I can't, like I said, there's no physical part of me that is me. Like, I exist, I am a thing, I am here.
I don't know what that means.
But if you go digging around, there's no point of, there's no like physical point of existence that is, there's no object that is me.
Your brain. Your brain is you. Your brain, and to some extent also your gut microbiome and your endocrine system as a whole. Your body. Just all, you have 11 organ systems that are working together to make you you. Where's the hang up with that?
I don't know. I'm just having a really hard time, I guess, comprehending that. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
So is it an issue of comprehension or is it an issue of emotion? Because like you said that like there's no single point, you move your brain piece by piece and it wouldn't, and like, yeah, I agree with all that. That's why I talked about emergent properties and things. And now you're saying again, well, there's no single thing that's me. I know. If you, there's good evidence to show that if you were to change the population of bacteria that live in your intestines, you would have different wants and desires and cravings for foods and things. It may change a lot about your body. It might change a lot about the way that your body metabolizes food. That'll change your physical form. That'll change your personality. That'll change your outlook on life. If it changes it in a significant way, you could get a lot of health issues and maybe become depressed, and you'd be a very cynical and bitter person all of a sudden in a different way than you are now. There's lots of ways we can change your physical body without even talking about your brain, which, as you already mentioned, we could take pieces out of and change who you are fundamentally. There's plenty of experiments on that. So like, is it an issue of you just want to hold on to this idea, or is it an issue that you just don't understand, human biology in that way, which is totally fine. You don't have to. It's not like you're going to, unless you're specifically trying to learn that shit. Nobody needs to know that. But like, where is the actual hang-up residing?
So I don't disagree that it, physical things can affect us and the way we think and all that. I don't disagree with any of that. I feel like there's something missing in that explanation. And
whatever's missing, what can you tell me about it? Whatever's missing, what can you tell me about it?
I guess I'm just caught up on the idea that when I am experiencing life, I am experiencing me. I am a singular me, a singular object. But if you go digging around inside, there's no object that is me.
You're not a
sorry.
singular.
We just addressed that a few times.
You're not a singular object. So when you say you're experiencing yourself as a singular object, your experience is wrong.
Also, I'm sorry, but I did just answer that question a couple of times in a couple of different ways. I'm not saying I was right for sure, but like,
I apologize. I'm just having a hard time understanding that, and I can't seem to get away from that concept. But I apologize if I'm explaining it poorly.
No, it's okay. I just want to make sure that I'm not like. I want to be careful because we sometimes in the show I'm not calling you dishonest. I'm just explaining that sometimes people will be dishonest and they will just ignore what the hell we just said and just restate their question. And so like, is there something that I said that you specifically have an issue with, or something that I could explain further? Something you don't understand? Is there something about my claim that you reject? That's totally okay. Like I said, I'm not saying for sure that I'm right. I think I am, but like, is there something specific about what I said that doesn't make sense? Because I did just answer that question twice.
I don't know. I may have to just think on this more or think of a better way to explain it. But I guess I'm just stuck on. Mm-hmm.
It also says here that you're calling in as a theist. So that means you believe in a God. You can't get rid of this idea of a soul, but you don't believe the soul exists outside of the body. I mean, what God are you believing in?
I don't know. Like I said, I grew up Southern Baptist, and I've already rejected.
How can you believe in something and not know? I mean, if you say you believe in a God, that means
there's a lot that I don't know.
They could have a vague idea of a God and not be able to let go of that yet.
It's more spirituality, I guess, that I kind of believe in, that I'm having a hard time letting go of. The idea that there's something more.
Yeah, spirituality is the fuzzy faith bridge. It's when you let go of a specific God claim, but you're not ready to let go of things like souls, even though you don't have any evidence for them existing, and you can't define what they are or aren't, and you have no idea where such a thing would come from or reside. It's this gray area in between belief and not belief in supernatural things. It sounds like you're on the right path to deconstruction. You just need to take some more time to grapple with where your personality comes from. Maybe if you're into science, read some biology and psychology literature on exactly that. And if you're not into science, then accept the fact that literally every other person, 8 billion people on this planet, also have their own independent lives and experiences that are completely unique and distinct from yours. Most of them will never know that you exist, and their lives are going to be rich and full and vibrant and weird and all these things, just as yours will be and has been probably. That's just part of the package. And even if you don't understand it, it doesn't make any sense to then insert a magical claim in there when we have evidence all around of people just being people.
Okay.
I guess I'm just going to have to think on it more. But thank you.
Yeah, and try to figure out, I mean, if you're going to call in as a theist, because that's saying essentially you believe in some sort of God, maybe try and get some characteristics jotted down for what God it is you believe in it. Because I personally have a difficult time saying I believe in X, and then if somebody says what's X, saying I don't know. Like there has to be something conceptual there, and I get it. You kind of went down that road to say, well, I think there's something more, something greater, but that's all language that doesn't describe a thing. It is as vague as possible. It is whatever. It is basically saying I have no idea what the concept is, what evidence there is for it, why I believe it. It's just this nagging, indescript or nondescript, ineffable, untestable, unfalsifiable thing. And it's also kind of weird because, you're like, oh, this concept of the soul, what am I without a soul? Well, if you are not a soul and you've never had a soul, then you are exactly what you were before you realized you had been taught something incorrect about yourself. You're still just the same as everybody else in that regard. But yeah, I don't know what a soul means. I don't care about like a metaphorical human spirit. Cool. We've got spirit. Yes, we do. We got spirit. How about you? I'm okay with that. But when we start talking about souls and gods, those things have at least somewhat normative usage that we have to be in the ballpark of. And so to say there's a soul, but it doesn't exist outside of the body at all. Okay, that I think is a deal breaker for whether or not it should be called a soul. And similarly, while not every proposed God needs to fit the God of classical theism in its entirety, if your God doesn't have the basic characteristics of being a thinking agent that has incredible power, like universe creating power, I might as well say my cell phone is my God, and then people be like, oh, I believe your cell phone exists, therefore God, there's some bare minimum of a threshold for a soul or a God before I think it's useful to kind of dig in on. That makes sense.
Okay, you've been incredibly sweet and patient with us, and I really appreciate you calling in, and I hope that you think about it more and call us back sometime.
Thank you. There's kind of one thing that was in my mind that I thought was going to be part of my argument, but I guess we didn't get to. If you don't mind, if I ask that question.
Go for it.
So it's a bit of a God of the gaps argument, but if we see a thing that we can't explain, at what point do we declare it as supernatural instead of saying we just don't understand it yet? Like
we never declare something as supernatural until we, one, demonstrate a mechanism to identify supernatural things, and two, use that mechanism to confirm that it is supernatural. At no point does we don't have a natural explanation justify asserting that it's supernatural.
But wouldn't we feel like if there was hypothetically something supernatural, like, and we tried to study it, like, at what point do you just say that is supernatural versus
I just answered that question.
I just
answered that question, Kay. If there's something supernatural, we currently have no way to identify that it is in fact supernatural. We currently have no way to test for whether a proposed supernatural explanation is in fact supernatural. And until we have a way to identify and confirm that something is supernatural, you don't get to say that it is supernatural. Just like if you don't have a way to detect high blood sugar, if you don't have any way to detect high blood sugar in a patient, you don't get to just say, oh, we've ruled out all the things I know about, therefore it's high blood sugar. That's not how epistemology works. That's not how sound reasoning works. Nothing. You never get to claim it's supernatural until you can demonstrate that supernatural things exist, you can detect them, and this one has been confirmed.
Okay. I guess that's all I had today. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Kay.
Thank you, Kay.
All right. We got
I gotta hand it to them. They it is. I think that Kay was very brave, and I think that they were asking tough questions for themselves, and they were dealing. And even though both of us would answer a question and then they would ask again, I think that was showing I think that was showing that just how tough of a battle this is that they're dealing with. They were very sweet about it, and I hope that they go back and rewatch this call. Yeah, it sucks, and I hope that they go back and rewatch this call and maybe kind of grapple with what we're saying a little bit more and come up with some more specific questions and more specific definitions for next time, because I think they're almost there, and then they've got a lot of work left to do.
You've got to dig in. It's Kay struggling with a lot of leftover thoughts that are kind of jumbled together, and I'm different from some people in that I don't know how I could possibly say that I believe something if I can't put some sort of description on what it is that I believe. Because in order to believe something, that means I have to be aware of it and convinced that it is in fact true or likely true. And that's why when somebody's like, oh, do you believe in a God? No. But that's not the same as saying, I believe every God claim is false, because I don't know how anybody could say that when they are unfalsifiable and untestable for some of them. But we've got more theistic callers. And interestingly, this one's going to kind of jump into that area a little bit. So Marty, no pronouns preferred, calling from Missouri, wants to know about what we would require for proof of a God. How you doing, Marty?
Oh, cool. Good. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm from Missouri, so I'm
Where in Missouri?
Well, I was born in North Kansas City, but I graduated from Francis Howell in St. Charles.
That explains the attitude.
Yep.
Oh, I get it.
You got to show me.
Missouri.
We get
from Missouri.
We get feisty down here, man.
Well, I'm in Texas now, so you're up in the, the colloquial direction. Anyway, what do you got for us?
Yeah. Well, I guess my question is number one, what would you require to believe in a God? I guess would be the first thing, or what would be the attributes or the explanations? Meaning, does it have to have infinite intelligence? Is there a super or metaphysical aspect, that sort of thing? Number one. And then I had a follow up, just quick.
Yeah, you completely jumped from what evidence would you need for a God, and then started listing characteristics of a God. The characteristics of a God aren't evidence, but you would have to give me the characteristics in order for me to know what kind of evidence might be required. But generally speaking, for gods, here's my answer. I have no idea what evidence should convince me that a God exists, because I think it would take, hang on, I'm not done. But if there is a God, any God worth the label should know exactly what it would take to convince me and should be capable of providing that evidence. And that has never happened, which means either that God doesn't exist or it doesn't want me to know it exists yet. But to presume that I have the knowledge and intelligence to be able to distinguish the difference between one advanced technology that I don't understand, one magical supernatural thing that I don't understand, and a God is arrogant beyond measure. And I don't know how other people do it. I don't know how people say, I've been able to tell that's a God.
Yeah, that's my big thing is if I were to go back to the 1400s with a megaphone, a cell phone, and a decent card trick and a pocket lighter, they would probably consider me a god as well. So if there were aliens with super advanced technology, they might convince me that was a god. If I had a psychotic break, I might be convinced that there was a god. If there was a gas leak in my house, I might be convinced of a god. If I was drugged, I might be convinced of a god. There are a lot of reasons why something might seem supernatural and extraordinary and beyond explanation and all these things. And if I were to see those things, I would then say, okay, I have no idea what this is. I have no label for this. I have nowhere to go with this. To actually get me to saying this is for sure a god, it's a tough one to say. But just to parrot, Matt, if God is real, God knows. Matt, you had your finger up for a second. What were you saying?
Yeah. I want you to get to your second point, Marty, but also I was going to ask what convinced you, but what's more important is, what do you think should convince us?
That is a good question. That's a good question.
Well, okay. Well, then I can actually just talk about one of the things that actually convinced me that there was a God, and not even any particular God necessarily, or what would I'll say this, what you could call a grand architect or some sort of intelligent designer, right?
Okay.
The thing that would convince me of that. What's that?
Wait, are you saying the thing that would convince you,
I'm
or the
sorry.
thing that did convince you?
No, the thing I'm going to talk about the thing that did convince me of an intelligent designer.
Sure.
And that would be
Okay, neat.
essentially mathematics itself.
Mathematics what?
Mathematics itself.
Okay.
The entire subject of mathematics. And
Really?
I'll give you a few reasons why. Number one, when you say it's a concept, right? Okay, we could say yes, because what is the definition of concept here? I got it right here. It's an abstract idea or thought that is the foundation for mere concrete beliefs, thoughts, and principles, right? So we could say that concept obviously is the etymology of conceive, right? So we conceive this in our mind as if we just think this up as just an idea, but yet this idea, quote unquote, of mathematics is universal in every person's mind. Meaning,
So what?
there's a number line, right? And when we look at whole numbers or integers, we have a number line. That number line goes 1, what's after 1, 2, what's after 2, 3. That number line is universal for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're atheist, agnostic, if you believe in God, what your language is, when you lived, where on earth you live.
Sure. So
and
what?
It's universal for every person. It's also
You know what
the
else is
basis
universal?
of every science you do.
Yeah, physics is universal.
Yes, but where does this math come from? Because this math is not physical, as
Marty.
you know.
So that's
Marty.
That is a huge debate: is whether math is discovered or invented. Math could very well be just a product of. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm just saying. You said, "Where does it come from?" That's a presumption on your part that it comes from someplace.
Yeah. So
well,
that's the thing. It's like
it either has to be conceived in our as Forrest was just saying, it either has to be conceived in our mind, or we have to extract it directly from nature itself. So either way, where does it come from? The question is, is mathematics itself an emergent property of the evolutionary, all the evolution of the universe since the Big Bang? We actually use mathematics to understand this alleged Big Bang. That's what we use. So then we have to ask, when did this whole thing come in? Because we also have to realize a few things here about math. Number one, universality of it, the fact that it is metaphysical, but does actually bleed into, if you will, that's probably a terrible way to say that, but a physicality. We can look at a snowflake. We can look at loads of things, like how a beehive works. You can see clear geometry there that you can either say, okay, are we looking into the physical world itself and extracting that out, or is it, are we conceiving in our mind? If we're conceiving in our mind, then we should be able to change the properties of the numbers themselves. And let me explain.
No.
Meaning, number one, you have a number.
There's
hold on.
There's a lot there. Let's deal with what you just. Let's deal with what you just said.
No, we're not holding on.
Hold on.
No, you don't get to tell us to hold on.
Okay.
What are you laughing at? Here, let me put you on fucking mute, and you hold on for a second. Don't tell us to hold on. We're in charge of the show. Some of us have done this for 20 fucking years and have heard the same things over and over again. We're going to ask specific questions designed to get to a better understanding and to let the people who are watching know, because sometimes we're going to talk past each other. I'm going to have some understanding, Forrest's going to have a different understanding, you're going to have a different understanding, and we need to get on the same page. But at no point do you tell us to hold on. It's us. We will tell you to hold on.
We also just let you talk for like 5 minutes explaining this thing, and like, well, now we have some questions. So you just gave us a lot of stuff. We're gonna parse through it first. Imagine if we let you just give your whole thing and we didn't care about the very first thing. It would be so unproductive for everybody, right? None of that would be relevant.
So this notion about abstractions and mathematics. Why would you think that mathematics points to any being at all?
Can I speak now? Am I unmuted?
Did you hear me ask you a question? Did you hear me
Yeah,
ask you
well,
a
I didn't know if
question?
I was unmuted. You said you.
Did you hear me
you
ask
muted
you a
me,
question?
And you yelled at me, and so I was
Did you hear
waiting,
me?
and
All right, now I'm going to fucking mute you. When you hear me ask you a
Again.
question and pause, in normal human conversations, asking someone a question and pausing is their indicator that now it's time for them to talk. It's not an indicator for them to say, "Can I talk now?" because that sounds whiny. So, when with an abstraction like mathematics, why do you think it points to a being?
Number one, we don't even necessarily need to call God, quote unquote, a being, but beyond that, beyond any descriptors of God whatsoever, what we do have within mathematics, once again, is what I was going to say is, as you walk up this number line goes infinitely, number one. And when you look at every single one of those numbers, they have their own particular qualities, their own particular attributes, their own divisors, their prime numbers, non-prime numbers. And I know those are categories, quote unquote, but those are categories within this entire study of mathematics. So my question is, number one, like, okay, so where does this whole thing, mathematics, come from? If it's not something that we can get directly from the physical world, if it's not an emergent property of evolution, then where does this quote unquote metaphysical math that's just allegedly a concept, as you're saying, in your mind, except this concept is universal in all of our minds? So my question
Are you
is,
talking
that
about
points to
when
a
you
source,
say
and
when you
that
said
points-
that was one question. When you say math, are you talking? You keep saying math and you keep saying numbers, and those aren't necessarily the same thing. Like numbers
They're
can
not.
just be things, and you can do math with them, but like I'm trying to understand like where your actual argument is. Are you saying that the fact that humans are able to count? I am asking a question. Are you saying that humans being able to count in the first place is evidence of this higher power? Are you saying our assignment of labels to numbers that are countable or uncountable in any way, that's the thing? You reference the concept of infinity. How important actually is infinity? Like, I don't understand where you're going from. You're throwing a lot of stuff at us all at once, each one of which has like 5 questions involved.
Okay, well, for us to be able to count, that number system has to be in place in the first place. Because if it's not in the place in the first place, and we count and we just made those numbers up, then we should be able to manipulate the attributes and qualities of those numbers, but we cannot. Those numbers.
No, you didn't answer my question. You didn't answer my question. I'm sorry, you didn't answer my question, and it may be because hold on. It may be because I didn't get across what I'm saying properly. Because like what you just said doesn't make any sense to me, and I want to get further into it. When you said that when we count, that's because a number system exists. Art, what do you mean by that? Do you mean to say, because there's a couple ways I can interpret that. Are you meaning to say that like the fact that certain numbers of things exist and therefore we can prescribe numbers or concepts of numbers or whatever the hell to the fact that I have 5 fingers on this hand, the objective reality is that there is more than one finger, so I have established a number that I'm calling 5 to denote this many fingers? Like, is that what you're saying? Or are you saying that like the number 5 by any name is this ethereal perfect thing, like an Aristotelian form that exists somewhere in the world? Like what are you saying?
Okay,
was that Plato or Aristotle? It doesn't matter.
I'm going to try to answer. I'm going to try to answer your question, because I think what you're asking is like the number 7, number 1, regardless of language or what actual character or symbol is used to denote the quote unquote number. I guess the question would be to you guys: do you think that the number 7 exists?
No, but also
I believe
you said. Sorry,
I'm sorry. I believe that 7 things exist.
The number.
So, like, if there are 7 things, then I can call that 7.
In order to believe, yes, but you can call it 7. But as soon as you say 7, you're not just saying a quantity of number. You're actually also bringing into it a quality, and you also, and to answer the question about when you say mathematics. Hold on.
No,
that's the issue.
Don't you fucking tell me to hold on.
That's the issue.
So first of all, don't just stop talking and listen. Just stop talking for a second. You said numbers have qualities. Is 111 prime? Because prime was a quality that
no.
you mentioned when you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong. You're wrong. 111
no,
is
111 is no
111
stop
talking. Stop talking and listen, and you'll fucking learn something. 111 is not prime in base 10, but it is prime in base 2 and base 3. The quality that you were trying to attribute to the number is not a function of the number. It is a function of the number interacting with the system, which does not exist. Numbers can be played with and counted and moved in a number of different ways. The things that you want to point to as a quality of the number is actually a complex, emergent interaction, but of that number with other numbers, depending on the system that it's in. That was the point. You have oversimplified numbers. You have oversimplified. Now, are you getting ready to say, where do they come from?
No, I was going to say.
What were you going to say?
When you look at, what I was going to say is, to answer your question about what is mathematics, mathematics is not actually just numbers. It's also numbers and the relationship to geometry.
Nobody said math was numbers. Nobody said that.
Yeah, if you're not going to argue, if you're not going to argue with what, shut up. If you're not going to argue with what we actually say, I don't want to talk to you. So stop saying we say, implying or saying, stop talking and saying or implying we said something we didn't fucking say.
I wasn't.
You just did.
You literally just did. You literally, shut up. You literally just implied that we said math is just numbers. If you did not imply that, why then would you say math isn't just numbers?
If I'm sorry if that was misconstrued, but I'm saying that what I'm presenting is saying that when I speak about mathematics as the subject in general, this includes an umbrella, of course, of numbers, and we have to discuss what numbers are, but then also whatever those numbers are, we also have to, whatever based system we're using, why should those numbers have any relationship to the geometry which we find in physical form? Why is there even any of that at all? Because once again, as I asked, is that our numbers an emergent property of matter, of this the evolution of just, cells and all that sort of stuff, or did it exist intrinsically within the evolution? The evolution that finally made, as you guys believe, monkeys to us. That's my question.
So a while ago, when you very first started down this road, I brought up the fact that this is an ongoing debate about whether math is discovered or invented. Because the fact is that, taking it to physics, the planets speak math, the galaxy speaks math, your circulatory system speaks math. Physics is this universal thing that is applicable all over the place, and it tells us how the universe works from the very smallest to very largest scale. However, our models, our systems, are things that we have derived and that aren't always accurate at all scales. The fact that there's a totally different set of rules for quantum physics versus classical mechanics versus general relativity, very different kinds of mathematics for different scales of things, is a little bit of a reason to say that, okay, this is actually just us describing what's happening in the universe, not actually learning what the universe is doing, as you could argue is what, so there's actually different ways to look at this, and you're presenting this as if it's this absolute truth that we're discovering, which is one side of a very big and damn near unsolvable debate that's been going on for centuries. And you're trying to prescribe, okay, this is what God is, or this is evidence for some sort of a God. And I don't think that's reasonable. And I would ask you, just keeping on the topic of physics, I don't know what the numbers are for specifically mathematicians, but I do know that among religiosity among scientists, physicists tend to have some of the lowest rates of belief in any gods. Atheism is highest among physicists, biologists, and geologists, I think, among the scientists. Well, and so why is it, if math is this universal language that is proving us that God is real, why is it the people who study that stuff for a living so frequently disagree with you and say that this isn't a reason to believe in a God at all?
Well, regardless of that, that doesn't answer any of the questions that I posed. Like, it doesn't
I just
matter
asked you a question.
what
I would appreciate if you answer it.
Okay, I'm going to solve this. I'm going to solve this really easily. I'm going to solve this really quickly and easily. First of all, you asked about why do numbers seem to interact with patterns in nature, and that's because some things are quantifiable and we use numbers to describe that. But let's assume for a second that we didn't know anything at all about the questions you're asking about numbers. Let's say we didn't know a thing, and my answer is I don't know. Here's my question to you, Marty. How do you know that it's God? And what do you mean by God?
Well, actually, number one, like the notion of math itself, if you will, and pointing to number one, as I said, no particular God, no religious belief, no denomination, no spiritual belief or anything like that, just the idea that there is an intelligent designer. When you look at math, as I said, when you say, hey, Forrest just said, hey, we use math in this and quantum physics and all this other stuff. But what is the commonality? What is the universality of that?
You don't ask a question, math. Answer the question.
And I'm just getting to it. Please just give me a little leeway here a second. Thank you. And so what I was saying is, like, when I see that, when I see numbers, when I see that numbers themselves have an order, they literally have a particular order, which actually says what? What does order tell us? At least for me, when I see order, that at least it leads to some sort of design. Now, we could argue about that or whatever, but mathematics itself has a
it's incremental.
Order. Well, no,
it's
I'm not
incremental.
Right,
it is the property of addition. Stop talking. It's incremental. The fact that numbers progress in increment by one is us, but we're setting aside whether or not it's a discovery. What do you mean by God?
Well, number one, when we talk about as I said, like, if the only thing I'm going to say about God, when I mean God,
what do you mean by God?
This place was so this is an intelligent designer. That's all I'll say about it.
What is the demonstration? What is the demonstration? What is the demonstration? What is the fucking? All right, I'm going to mute you. What is the demonstration that the fact that numbers increment is confirmation of an intelligent designer? Go.
Because it points to the fact that, number one, that shows intelligence itself, because we use numbers itself.
No, Marty. Okay, I'm going to mute you again. I'm going to mute you every fucking time you do this. You ready? You said it points to the fact and we use numbers. No. What specifically about numbers, the quantities incrementing, points to an intelligent designer? Where is your demonstration that isn't just the way it is and the only way it could be? Where's your demonstration that a God is required to explain that, or an intelligent designer is required to explain that?
Well, when you say when it is, what do you mean by it just it is? What do you mean it just it is? I asked you, was math?
Okay. I'm asking you, you're the one who believes that we need an explanation for why numbers increment. And you believe that you have the explanation that it's intelligently designed. I'm not convinced that any explanation is needed or possible. I don't have any reason to believe that it could be any other way. And in the absence of everything, in the absence of a universe, in the absence of a multiverse, the truth that we have identified exists just the same. It doesn't change. If you eliminate every single mind and every particle of matter in every possible universe, 1 + 1 is still 2. The concepts that we're conveying, the very notion that you think that needs an explanation and that it must be, or probably is, an intelligent designer, is hereby rejected. You cannot claim that you have an explanation for something without showing that an explanation is needed and that it is not merely just the way it is. Just like the laws of logic, from which mathematics are derivative, you have identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. A thing is what it is, it's not what it's not, and everything is neither or both. So where's the demonstration that math needs a grounded explanation?
That math needs a grounded explanation?
Yes.
It just is. In other words, none of us can deny the fact that there's a number 1, there's a number 2, there's a number 3. You denied that there's a number 7. If you're denying a number 7,
I did not deny there's a number 7. I did not deny there's a number 7, Marty. I said I don't believe that it exists as a thing. But go ahead, Forrest.
No, it's fine. I have a totally different line of question because it's very clear that this isn't going to go
Do
anywhere.
a different line of question because mine's not working.
It's it's not just yours. It's both of us because it's very clear that Marty is kind of stuck on this concept. And so I just want to try a different approach for just a second, Marty. What is the difference between what you're saying to us right now and when a creationist tells me about irreducible complexity and saying there's things like eyes and ears and wings and stuff, and these are all so perfect that they just couldn't have possibly evolved? I understand that there's a different arguments. I understand why, but I'm saying on a fundamental level, what's the actual difference between that and you sitting here saying, oh, there's this numbers, there's this math stuff that's so perfect and so big, therefore it must be a god?
Well, to be honest, I didn't call in about that, nor was I asserting anything that evolution couldn't do that or that there is.
Didn't say you were. I asked you, what is the difference?
What is the difference between what? I'm sorry.
So again, I didn't say you were calling about that. I didn't say you were calling about that. I asked, what's the difference fundamentally between your argument here saying that math is this big, complex, universal thing that's fundamental and therefore blah, 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 God, and a creationist saying that XYZ thing is so big and complex and difficult that it must be God designing it? Because that is the fundamental thing, is that it's there must be an intelligent designer because this thing is so incredible, is so complex, is so universal, is so fundamental, is so anything. X is so Y that it must have an intelligent designer. I don't see, that's the fundamental argument that I'm hearing, and I'm asking you if you can make a distinction between them.
Oh, well, no, I don't. I mean, I'm not here to make a distinction between those things. I don't even know what I would say about that, to be honest. That's all.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because that kind of concept is really, really not useful for me at all to demonstrate an intelligent designer. And that's what it sounds like you're saying. And so, if that's what I'm going to argue against now, which I would like to, because that's what it sounds like to me, and I have arguments against that, I was giving you an opportunity to say that's not what I mean, and here's why. But if you don't have a distinction, then that's the path that I would go on with this call.
Then I will say this, if I may, though mathematics is a very useful concept to you, though, right? You use it in every facet of every science, whether that's chemistry, physics,
so is evolution,
quantum physics.
So is evolution.
Trigonometry.
Evolution is extreme.
Exactly.
Yes. So is evolution. Evolution is extremely useful and it impacts every part of your life. And so that doesn't answer anything about what I just said.
Well, no, because what I was saying is originally from this conversation is that here we have a universal a system that we use to explain reality. You use it in literally every single science to explain away God. It is ordered. Every single one of those numbers, once again, has a correlate in geometry. Every single one of those numbers has particular qualities to them. Not one human being can change the particular qualities of those numbers.
These are all things you've said. These are all things you've said 5 times over the course of this call. My question is, even if we can't explain it, because you were saying it needs to be explained, you had this argument matter about whether or not it needs to be, it doesn't matter. If we can't explain it, let's say that I agree with you, that I have no explanation for what math is, where it comes from. It's just this huge, crazy universal thing that ties the whole universe together and whatever else I have no explanation for God, for mathematics, and I have no understanding of it whatsoever. It's amazing, it's beautiful, it's big, blah, blah, blah. How does that then necessitate an intelligent designer? Why doesn't that necessitate saying, I don't know. I don't know what this is. It's very big and it seems to be ubiquitous and it's very cool. And I don't know what it is or where it comes from. Why do you then make the leap to say, I don't know, therefore, there's this guy who did it this way?
Well, I mean, I'm not even necessarily saying there's some guy that did it this way. In fact, when you asked why, in fact, Matt asked,
what?
Is a being.
It's you could
Sorry,
actually answer.
You said intelligent
question.
designer.
Yeah,
it's a guy.
Yeah.
Colloquially, we're not like saying that by guy. By guy, we're not saying man or dude. We're using a colloquialism for your intelligent fucking designer. And now you're backing off of that?
Oh, okay. Thank you. No,
Thank you.
I appreciate the clarity. Yeah. Okay.
So answer Forrest's question, which is by the way, answer Forrest's question, which is by the way my question from a while ago.
I just came at it from a different
Sure,
angle.
Yeah. What can you ask it again, please, concisely? Since you both asked.
Sure. Why, even if I accept that this is something that is universal and eternal and unexplainable, why are you comfortable, instead of just saying, I don't know what this is and I'd like to know more, instead saying, I don't know what this is, therefore there's a magic involved. There's some being that made it this way.
Well, I'll tell you personally why. I don't know if you guys are going to agree with this, but please let me at least flesh this out. I would say, number one, when we talk about numbers, just as we said, there's a number line. That number line goes into infinity.
I'm going to mute you
because
we don't need yet another fucking repeated description about the number line. Answer the fucking question or get the fuck out. Try again.
Because we have that and it's infinite, that gives us a universal thing that actually tells us that there is an infinite intelligence right there. Number one.
No, sir.
No, it doesn't. How do you make that connection? I just said a second ago. I'm sorry, you go ahead, Matt.
No, we're both saying exactly. Forrest and I are both literally saying, we just asked you, what about this? Why do you say there must be an intelligent designer rather than I don't know? And your answer is because it points to an intelligent designer. If you say anything that dumb again, I will fucking hang up. So please tell us, what about it points to an intelligent designer? Last fucking chance.
Okay, the numbers go infinitely. Those numbers are ordered. That speaks to order. Those numbers also give rise to form, which actually we can see in the physical world. Those things we can actually, once again, are universal and are available to all people.
Why does that point to an intelligent designer? How can you demonstrate that it's possible? Can you shut up? Can you demonstrate? Can you shut the fuck up and listen? Can you demonstrate that it's possible for numbers to have not been infinite and ordered?
Can you?
No, but I'm not saying that. You're saying because they're infinite and ordered, that means they must have been intelligently designed. That is a complete non sequitur that you need to justify, but you haven't even justified that they could have been any other way. If something could not have been any other way, then it wasn't designed. It was inevitable.
You can't prove a negative. So you were saying,
yes, you can prove a negative. Yes, you can prove a negative. Yes, you can prove a negative. That's what falsifiability is all about, is demonstrating that a particular claim is not true. What you cannot do is prove a universal negative. But the issue here is you're saying that because numbers are infinite and ordered, that means they were intelligently designed. You still have, that is the claim. That is the beginning claim. That is the first sentence that when you called in, you could have said, because numbers are infinite and ordered, I believe they're designed. And we would then say, why do you believe they're designed? Merely because they're infinite and ordered. And do you have any way to show that they could have been any other way? That's the question that we've been asking you. And now we've been at it for 32 fucking minutes. So if numbers are infinite and ordered, why does that indicate that there in fact was an intelligent designer? Last fucking chance, not even remotely kidding.
Because we use it to explain every single science out there.
Goodbye.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
Dude. You could have said the same thing about logic. Why did you pick math as this weird arbitrary thing? Like that's it's so strange.
Here's the problem,
and
Marty.
Again,
Go
it's
ahead.
not. I'm sorry. It's not any different. That's the point I was trying to make. It is absolutely no different than an intelligent design argument from any other thing. You can't explain, how complex photosynthesis is. Therefore, God. You can't explain how planets form. Therefore, God. You can't explain what's holding galaxies together. Dark matter is this ethereal thing. Therefore, God. You can't explain mathematics. Therefore, God. It doesn't matter. It's just this weird, I think it's Thomas Aquinas style shit of there's this concept of order and infinity. Therefore, there must be a thing that's orderly and infinite that made it that way. Why? Why is that the case? Why do you make the leap? Why can't you just say, I don't understand this concept. It's really cool. Maybe I should become a mathematician and learn about it. Instead, it's just, this is fucking interesting. Jesus did
also,
why?
the thing that you're trying to explain maybe isn't even a real thing that needs to be explained or anything else. So here's the sum total of substance that we got out of Marty today. Because numbers are infinite and ordered, they must have a designer. And when we say why, Marty says, because we use it. Well, I'm sorry. The fact that I use something also doesn't mean it's designed or designed for that use. So Marty, I've given you a million chances and you cannot put together an argument that is both valid and sound, that begins with numbers are infinite and ordered and concludes with, therefore an intelligent designer designed them. You have failed epically. Thank you for calling.
That content, though.
This is beyond useless. So here's the thing. Yeah, we're not going to get into the debate about whether or not mathematics is discovered or created, because I think there are elements of both in there. We have certainly created different mathematics, and we basically, base 10 is because I got 10 fingers. That's one of the reasons.
Also, other cultures used other bases. There's some cultures use base 5. There's some cultures that have done other shit with base 8 and stuff like this. If it's so universal, I don't know.
And in every one of those, what we're doing is we're beginning with a quantity, which, by the way, is recognizable. No matter what the language is, no matter what the number is, I'm holding up 2 cans. And when I say 2 cans, I'm speaking English, and I'm referring to any base more than 2. That is the label that I put on this quantity of cans. But that doesn't
not sponsored by San Pellegrino.
Yeah, we should be. If San Pellegrino, if you want to sponsor us, I will talk to the guy that owns this place because I love that stuff. But we begin with observations. And really, the concept of zero, which seems intuitive and obvious to all of us now, was still something that was essentially invented / discovered. We're not going to settle that debate today. And we know roughly when and by whom and how this starts working. But we begin with, I am an identity. I am one. I am me. But I have more than one arm. So when we start dividing me, we increase the quantity of the particular components. I have 2 arms, but each one of those arms is divided into, let's say, 3 arbitrary divisions: my upper arm, my lower arm, and my hand. And my hand is divided into 5 digits, but each of those have multiple phalanges. And so even just within myself, there are ways to identify quantity. And it doesn't matter whether I'm putting them in English with the labels that I'm most comfortable with, or in Spanish, those arms. But The quantities are things that we recognize and can interact with. And the reason that math seems so impressive is that I can write things down in a mathematical language, which we definitely, the languages of mathematics we invented. There's no conceptual two floating out there in the universe, and there's no governing intelligence saying, oh, here's what two is quantifiably, or at least nobody's been able to present one or identify one. Marty is just looking at, wow, it seems there's a lot of order, and that seems to be intelligently designed. But you have to demonstrate, if something is designed, you have to demonstrate that it could have been designed differently. Because if God made math, but it could only have been the way it is, then there's no intelligent design required, because there's no intelligence and there's no designing. It is simply an instantiation of a brute fact. And if it's just the case, because we play with numbers and numbers are our plaything, just like words are our plaything, the concept, and by the way, Forrest and I have been speaking in words, primarily in English, throughout the entire show. Those words are things that we invented, but the concepts that those words point to are not necessarily things we invented. In some cases, this cell phone is something that we invented. A tree is not something that we invented. And yet both of those exist as concepts, brain states in my mind. Don't confuse the map for the place. That's fallacious. Don't confuse the linguistical model with the concept, and don't confuse the concept with the brute fact. Mathematics is derived from the very basics of logic, of identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, and pushing forward. But we're about to lose Forrest, and we have 3 calls left. We don't do super chats on the Sunday show after dark, but
I'm just fine.
I don't know how you can be fine. It's wild. Let me do one more show announcement. We'll take the last couple calls here. As a reminder, Skeptalk's tomorrow with John Gleason and Paul Ince. Oh, no. Yes, sorry. I've got 2 weeks up here and I got confused because I'm not doing my show. Tuesday the 24th at 6 p.m. It was going to be Eve and Alyssa on Chewed Gum. Thursday's Transatlantic Call-In show is going to be at 2 p.m. Central with Josie and Luxander. Next Sunday on the regular Sunday show, I will be back again with Forrest Valkai. How fucking cool is that? So on the 29th, 1 week from today, 2 of us will be here, but at 2 p.m., hopefully we don't wake Forrest up too early.
Hopefully my clock will be reset by then. I don't know.
If it's not, we will have the same fun.
I exist, and like I was talking to Arden about this beforehand, and like I think she understands. I like phase through. I have like a 30-hour cycle instead of a 24-hour cycle, and so I just like phase through life weirdly, especially if I don't have a set schedule on things. It's bad.
Yep. All right. This wonderful person has been on hold for 2 hours and 58 minutes. Jan in Illinois, pronouns she, her. You have more patience than both of us put together. Thank you for waiting. We will try now to butcher your question.
Sorry, I actually have to go.
Oh, well, damn.
That's fair.
Bad typing.
I will just read your question as it was put in by the screener, and we will address it in your absence, and you can watch our answer later if that's fine.
Okay, that works for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Jan. So sorry. So Jan's question, Forrest, are science and religion compatible?
I don't think so. And I know there are a lot of religious scientists out there. But like for me, you have to, if you're a scientist, if you're not a professional, if you take science seriously, then you should want evidence for everything that you're doing. You should want a reason to believe in things. You should have an organized system in your head for like checking and fact checking and like double checking and like criticizing claims. You should understand that you never accept a hypothesis. You fail to reject it. The only reason you believe a thing is because you can't not believe it anymore. And so for someone to be a scientist or for someone to take science seriously and then also be religious means that you have to have like a special category in your head where you have a totally different kind of thinking than you would use for literally anything else ever. You are at all times, you understand evolution, you understand the Big Bang, you understand how chemistry works, you understand atoms, you understand all these different things about plate tectonics, and all you get this big concepts in your head and understanding the world. And then also sometimes there's magic. Like, why would you do that? They're just not, to me, they're not compatible. And I know there are a lot of people out there that make it work, but just not for me.
Yeah, and obviously I'm in agreement with Forrest there. I will point out religion is a big tent label. And so saying, are science and religion compatible? Well, it depends on the religion. I mean, I suppose I could make science my religion in some kind of mild sense. But I think that would also be kind of antithetical to the very principles of science. That when I think of science, first of all, science doesn't make proclamations of truth. It doesn't say X is true. What it does is it creates models that are the best attempt that we have to currently describe accurately all of the available evidence in a particular area. That's important. And the methods of science, all it cares about is trying to continually increase the accuracy of our internal model of the world and our shared model of the world. That's it. Doesn't matter what field it is. All we want to do is get closer and closer to accurate. Science is tentative. It is subject to revision. Religion is a tough label because, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and then the Jains, Scientology. Somebody probably thinks the Dallas Cowboys are their religion. There's sort of that colloquial aspect of it. Stephen Jay Gould famously proposed this concept called NOMA, or non-overlapping magisteria, that science and religion are asking different questions, and they are both supreme in their own bailiwick. That's bullshit. They are trying to answer the same things, and science, which is what's the explanation for an accurate model of how the universe works and why and where do we come from, they're asking the same sorts of questions about the physical world. Do you have a soul? What happens to it? And science is the single most consistently reliable path to accurate understanding that we have. And it only adopts the methods and mechanisms that continually demonstrate that they are the most reliable. Religions don't do that. Religions never do that, because then they'd just be science. Religions, all of them to some extent, add something to that. The magic that Forrest was referencing, and not just, the metaphorical magic, but some sort of violation of the laws of nature, miracles, a soul that exists after death, a being that somehow exists outside of time, whatever that means. Not all of those are part of every religion, but they are parts of many of the religions. There may be a religion out there that is nearly compatible with scientific principles and findings. I'm not aware of any actual major religion that is compatible with science at any significant level. But all right. We have a couple calls left. One here is from Rolf in Kentucky. Rolf has been on hold for 2.5 hours. Hopefully Rolf doesn't have to leave right away. Pronouns are he, him. Wants to talk about conversations on religion with religious people. So Rolf, what's going on?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. So I just want to get this out of the way real quick, gush a little bit. I've been watching the show for a long time. My wife and I love you two specifically.
I'm so sorry.
Actually, Forrest, I rewatch many of your videos on a regular basis.
Oh man, don't do that.
Okay, sorry, I'll stop. But so yeah, my main question.
Get out of there. Save yourself. Go on. I'm sorry. I'm being a Go ahead.
No, you're okay. You're okay. My main question is how is one to handle having these discussions and on occasion debates with religious peoples or people who are in-betweeners, as I've called them, because I try regularly to have the same attitude that you do, Forrest, a very calm demeanor, but I very regularly end up like Matt. No offense, Matt.
No
Love you.
offense,
Love you very much.
I know who I am.
And I feel like it kind of takes out any of the wind in my sails, or any bearing I may have on the conversation when I'm talking with these people, whether it be family or strangers. And I've noticed as I've been getting older, having these conversations over more and more time, I'm becoming angrier and more hateful.
Yeah. It's easy. It's easy. Especially when you hear the same fucking argument 30,000 times and everybody acts like they're the one who came up with it and that you're not giving them a fair shake because you're not letting them say the same thing that the other 30,000 people said. And yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I don't know how you two do it.
Yeah, drinking helps.
Take frequent breaks.
But yeah, no, the thing that really Matt is correct. Taking breaks, it's both of us are content creators. We're online all the time. I can say I'm online a lot of the day, every day, just not only to consume new content and learn what modern trends are and make sure I'm staying on top of the game, but also to create content so I stay relevant and I keep in people's algorithms and stuff like that. That's all very important. Also, it's how I make a living, and it can take a serious freaking toll on your mental health if you let it. You have to be the right kind of person for that, but that's not the concept of this call. The point of this call is talking about dealing with people like this. You can apply the same thing. It can take a serious toll on your mental health if you let those arguments and those conversations get to you. And if you fail to remember at all times that these are just people that you're talking to and that they probably don't mean any harm by what they're saying and that they probably don't actually believe the worst version of their beliefs, which is, if you're like me, I see crosses and things and I think they're hateful things. But I also remember that the people in that church are probably believing that they're good people, and many of them probably are. They just have a concept, a belief system that is, in my opinion, fundamentally hurtful. And so just trying to humanize the people that I'm talking to, remember that they are just people, and meet them on that ground, and also start conversations on their terms more than mine, so that I don't get frustrated trying to pull them to where I am. I just meet them where they're at, and then we'll work a little bit at a time. That's really helpful for me, and that keeps things pleasant and makes me less obnoxious and less angry. Matt, what are you saying?
Just real briefly, if I have one-on-one conversations with other people outside of the shows about religion, they don't ever go even a moderately bad call. I've been doing this for 20 years. And if you took the best calls, that's how almost every one-on-one conversation outside of the shows go. And it's not that the show is changing me. It's that I don't have the conversations with the people who would make the bad calls. I don't do that one-on-one. There's some block in their mind that I'd love to try to expose, and I try to do it here on the show, so that when they're exposed and they are made to look foolish, that can possibly help somebody else who agrees with them. But I don't have any delusions about, convincing it's rarer today, but actually maybe it's not that rare. Somebody who's definitely got a big fat wall up where it's just, oh, you can't be moral without God. You can't. No. There's no morality without God. There's no morality. You can't even talk about morality if there's not some God to ground morality. That type of stuff. almost never happens in actual conversations. What they'll say is, because now they're face to face, the cocksure bravery and brazen stupidity that leaps to the forefront when you're an anonymous caller calling into an internet show vanishes the second you and I are sitting in chairs across from each other or next to each other and talking 90 some odd % of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is one thing that's really important. Is like my in-laws are almost entirely Christian, and many of them don't know that I'm a few of them don't know that I'm an atheist, even because it wouldn't do any good to have that. But the ones that do, there's a couple of them that will try to talk to me about this, and to different degrees of earnestness. And there are some times where I will give an honest answer, and I will be very cautious with that answer so as not to be as antagonistic as I'm willing to be on a call like this, where I'm trying to make a point in a set amount of time to get a point across, not only to the caller, but also to the people watching. I'm going to be much more forgiving. I'm going to be much more willing to let them say shit that I let slide, and I don't hold their feet to the fire on a particular concept or a particular question. Or I might, depending on who it is, I might just say, I promise you don't want to talk to me about that. You want to talk about something, you know what I mean? Just like, I guarantee you that is not going to be a fun conversation. What do you want to do for dinner? You know what I mean? Like, let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
And I'll be very frank about that. And that works sometimes. So just, it really does depend on, a lot of times when people call in and ask about this, the first question is, who are you talking to? And what is the intended result of that conversation? Is this a family member? Is this somebody that you're trying to preserve your relationship with? If so, how important is this conversation as opposed to your relationship? How can you guide this conversation in a way that's going to maintain your relationship? Is it worth it to maintain the relationship? Or is the belief system so egregious that you don't want to? Is this a stranger? Are you trying to make friends with a stranger? Does it matter what the stranger thinks? Are more people listening that will be affected by this conversation? Like, there's a million and one questions to ask. What is actually worth your time, and how you actually want to address that conversation if you were going to address it in the first place?
Well, and as I said, I'm usually able to maintain a calm demeanor, but and I'm aware that this is a bad way to come at the argument from, but I am severely disabled, and pardon my French, but I've had a pretty shit life, not just with the disabilities, but loss of my father at a young age, an abusive household, and I have never been religious. I've even as a child going to Sunday school because my grandmother was religious. It didn't make sense to me then. It doesn't make sense to me now. And it often feels, when I get into these discussions, it's a bit of a spit in my face when I am told, not by everyone, some people have different beliefs when it comes to this sort of thing, but there are people, especially considering I live in Kentucky, that look at me as if I am the problem, or that I have done this to myself, or that this is just the shitty card that I got dealt, but it's all because this guy's got a great plan. Just you watch. It kind of feels like a spit in my face, and that's kind of where I lose that calm, and that tends to be what I struggle with the most. Because I can't understand that thought process.
I get it. Go back and listen to what we said to the first guy. I think it was one of the first calls we took was from a Catholic named Thomas, I believe, who was beginning to doubt his Catholicism, and he'd been raised him. We talked about how, like, the issue is that you were abused. You were taught these horrible things because the people who abused you were also abused and taught these horrible things. So, like, that's where I'm coming from. Like, I have been told by someone who is a family member that I care about that God is going to bring me to my knees and take away everything I have and destroy all of my happiness, and then I will know him, and that'll be great. And how immensely fucked up that you want me to be that hurt and that upset so that I can join your book club. That's kind of fucked up. But I know this person really doesn't hear it that way. It's the same way, I talk about all the time. I think that the phrase Jesus loves you and God loves you and shit like that, I think those are hateful things to say, because the actual context is you're so fucking diseased and sick and broken and disgusting and terrible. The best thing, the most moral thing in the world would be for you to just fucking burn in a lake of fire for eternity. You deserve torture, not even in this life, but in all potential possible lives for the rest of time. But I guess if you do this thing, then you get to not be tortured forever. It'll be really cool. Fuck you. What? Who would say that to somebody? But they really think that this is a loving, kind, sweet, generous, welcoming, warm thing to say, because that's what they've been taught through their abusive chain of religion. And so this, someone saying, well, your disability and your life and all these things, you're all part of a plan. That's their coping mechanism. They're not trying to insult you. They're revealing their coping mechanism for when bad shit happens to them. When someone says that this is your fault and all these things, that's a fucking awful thing to say. That's what's been put on them. That's the shame that has been given to them whenever something bad happened to them. Well, you masturbated, so of course you got in a car wreck, you asshole. Like it's just this buck passing that puts it on you rather than blaming their God for anything, because you're not allowed to do that. And so, like, what you are experiencing is the same kind of abuse and the same kind of broken coping skills that were created as a result of the abuse that was given to those people now being passed on to you, because those are the heuristics that they have. And so addressing that with a bit of compassion for those people will maybe help you not feel anger. And also just putting out there, your anger is fucking valid. And so don't be upset with yourself for feeling it. Just don't take it out on them, because it's not their fucking fault that they were abused in this way. And maybe a helpful tool will be calmly saying, okay, here's what you actually just fucking said to me. What a hell of a thing to say to somebody. I have found a very useful tool to just say, that is a wild thing to say to me. And then just immediately now the ball's in their court to think, why is that crazy? Why is that weird? Whatever like that. Rather than attacking their belief and saying, fuck you for this reason. Just, that's a hell of a thing to say. Wow, that's awful. That's incredibly hurtful. Why would you say that to me? And taking it that way would be helpful. In my opinion, is what I like to do.
There would be no cars on the road if we got in car accidents for masturbating.
Well, if you're masturbating while driving, it depends. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing.
That's fair.
I feel like you did that one to yourself if you're jerking it while driving.
Exactly.
But
now you do need to be blamed.
I appreciate that quite a lot, actually, because as I've said, I've been kind of angry my whole life because I've lived in a lot of religious areas, and being told that I was made wrong by somebody who's supposed to be loving. It's very frustrating because it even though I've never been religious, it was always as a kid, why don't I feel loved? And I grew out of that, but it's something I've been working to get past in the past couple of years with the help of my wife and my friends. I've realized that even with all the crap, there are still good things that I get even without a God's help. And there are occasional relapses. I don't take it out on people, but it is incredibly difficult to have someone look you in the face and say, like somebody made a comment in the live chat, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, when I have attempted on more than one occasion because I can't often handle this. But with the help of my wife and my friends, I've found some peace. And that has been more helpful than anything. And I guess on some level, when I have these conversations with people, I'm not trying to deconvert them. I'm just trying to understand. But it very quickly becomes a very angry and frustrating situation because I can't understand that thought process. So I will try to keep in mind what you've said and use that.
You can also add some humor to it, because when they say God won't give you more than you can handle, they're technically correct, because God hasn't done anything.
There you go. Yeah. It also might be helpful. I mentioned repeating back to them what you just heard. it might also be helpful to, if you're willing to get into this kind of a heated thing, to hold their feet to the fire a little bit about what they were just saying. I use this tactic sometimes when people try to talk about divine command theory, when people try to talk about how like everything, God's in control of everything and everything is that God does is good and blah, 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 blah. And I'll say, okay, let's pick a thing. Let's talk about starving kids or talk about pedophilia, talk about whatever like this. Like, if you're holding this belief, then you must say that those are good things because God's doing them on purpose and God's plan is good. So this is good that these things are happening. So for you, that might be, if you're willing to have that kind of a heat, it'll get emotional, but like that might be useful to kind of get across to these people. You are telling me that my disability, my grief, my pain, all of these things are not only acceptable, they are good things. So I want you to own up to that. I want you to look me in the eye and tell me that you are glad I am disabled. It's a good thing that this happened and you're happy about it. Say that to my face, seriously. And like, just kind of holding their feet to the fire on that so that they can kind of grapple with just how uncomfortable that shit is. And maybe that'll help it's helped me get through to some people. To say, are you serious? I want you to tell me right now that you think the children that starve to death every day, you're glad that's happening. It's a good thing for those kids to starve because it's a part of God's plan and God's plan is good and everything God does is perfect and good. So tell me, say it to me, you're happy kids are starving today. And it more often than not, somebody will have the kind of break. They're like, oh, fuck, I guess I need to find a new apologetic to lean on because this one sucks. You know what I mean? That might help.
Well,
those are a few
don't want to
different
ramble on
tactics.
too much longer. I don't want to ramble on too much longer. I'm mostly just kind of amazed that I've been given the chance to talk to you guys. I've been trying to for weeks.
God, you waited almost 3 hours.
Yeah. I appreciate you both and what you do. Like I said, love, coming in and listening to these and watching videos and such. Keep up the good work, I guess, as awkward as that sounds.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And next time, don't wait 3 hours. Just, take a break. Drop me a message like on Facebook Messenger or something. You can add me there and we won't make you wait like a whole 3 hours.
Or you don't let him tell you how to live your life. So. You wait 3 hours if you want.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to Forrest.
Isn't that 3 hours of viewing time that you get?
That's true.
I mean, I guess.
Hey,
all right. Thanks so much, Ralph. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
See you later, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I gotta say, we got, freaking, what is this? We got Kevin in the chat. We got Rod Galt in the chat. We got some other guy named David in the chat. We got like a million different people who, even to this point, are just now having messages deleted because they're in there saying, well, God ordered the universe, and how can you have this and that without God? And you don't have morality without this and that. Dude, you had 3 hours. We've been on the fucking thing for 3 hours and 13 minutes. You had so much time to call and make your case in front of thousands, tens of thousands of people. And you're just screaming into the void in the chat. Why? Call the show. Tell us. It's weird, man.
It's funny. It's funny because, people should know they're not just going to, you're not going to get into debate and chat. There's certain things you're just not going to be allowed to say. You shouldn't ever be questioning or challenging any of our moderators because while I may have disagreements with some moderators at some point, somewhere, whatever else, you're never going to win. Over one of our moderators. I will back them. Even if later on we change a policy and talk and do whatever else, while the show's going on, talking back to a moderator, that's even dumber than calling in and refusing to answer the question. Because at least then we get like some content we get to talk about. You do that in chat, your shit just gets deleted and you just go away. But final call
There's a way
for
to do
today. Are you ready? We have
literally. Wait. Oh, never mind. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Literally what?
No, it's just somebody just now, as we were saying this, just got fucking banned in chat for saying some weird pro-life shit about the choice and things like that. Call in. You had 3 hours. We would have talked about it. We would have talked about it. But here you are with your Christian profile picture and shit talking about abortion. You could have asked a question. You might have convinced some people. Thousands of people watch this show. Call in.
Here we go. Thank you for waiting 90 minutes there. Jack in Thailand's calling in as an atheist. Welcome, Jack. What's your question?
Hi, am I on?
Yes.
You are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I actually can't see the video. There's like 10-second delay on the video.
Yeah, it's more than that.
As long as you can hear me.
Yep,
we can hear you just fine. I would recommend not watching the video because it will throw you off.
Okay. I have been a Christian for a long time, and I got out of it about 4 or 5 years ago. I was a big contributor to, thank you, organization called Compassion. I donated over $3 million.
Jesus.
What's the organization called?
Compassion.
Okay.
Yeah, nice.
The organization is huge. They rack in billions of dollars every year in the name of donation. Not that it's important. My question is, you guys are doing a bang-up job and debating these so-called people who believes in Bible, but who obviously have never read cover to cover, and trying to debate you guys, which is obviously very idiotic. But what I'm asking for is actual help for people like me who came out of the trap of Christianity. But because I'm 50 years old, I've seen things, I know things, I travel, all of the world, speak 4 different languages. I can get sense of it. But I left my 15-year-old daughter and 11-year-old son into the Christianity trap when I got divorced. And I've been trying to get them out of it, but it's been very hard.
Yeah.
What is the realistically, kind of advice you can give it to me, dealing with that? Because the kids don't know. It's hard to educate them. Even the truth doesn't really go through to their brain because, as you've been, talking, their frontal lobe hasn't been developed yet.
Yeah.
So, what's my options? I mean, I can support the channel with thousands of dollars, but can I, a person like me, can get a help from you guys? Like, is there any kind of example how we get children out of? Basically, it's a Christian abuse. You put them in that box and you tame them and like you abuse a little animal.
Yeah. So I would say
I want to.
I would say a couple of things just to start out with is, like, as an educator, the language that you use is really important. And so, like, if you're talking to them about this stuff, making sure to just remind people this is a belief. Some people believe these things and some people don't, and things like that, and letting them know it's an option. That's really handy. If you want to learn with them and talk about it, have them read their Bible. Go for the Bible and talk about it. Hey, here's this part that talks about slavery. Here's this part that talks about, they might be a little bit too young for some of it, but here's the part that talks about incest. Here's the part that talks about, a genocide. Here's the part that talks about this and that. That's why I don't like it. But I know, your mom and I know these other people in our community do. It's pretty popular. But these are the reasons I'm not a fan. Here's some more information about it. Giving them that context in a way that isn't just telling them hey, this is you can't do this, you can't believe this, because that will play directly into the Christian trap of saying, well, you're being oppressed. Someone's trying to tell you you're not allowed to believe this. That means it's true, right? That's sign of the end times, is that people are coming against it. So just, just spending time and sharing the fact that it's not required to believe this stuff. And in fact, you can be a good person without believing this stuff, and you can have a happy life without believing this stuff. And here's what the book actually says, and it's not great. That's how I would start on the on that path, just myself. I'm also not a parent.
I have, and we've been trying to read the Bible, from the very beginning, the full chapter, not the verses, because verses will throw you off. So the actual content of the Bible. But, they have been raised from the very moment of the conception in the Christianity dogma. It's like they don't know what other world is out there without, explaining everything into Christianity. I mean, there's a clear contradiction, even in the New Testament, how the Bible doesn't make sense. And, I slightly gently try to explain that, as funny as it may be, how, John the Baptist and Jesus was cousins. They knew it from the very old, young age, probably raised together. Those historical facts that could just reveal, instantly in the Bible if you read it side by side. But, they wouldn't have it because they have been brainwashed too much. And I don't think they are at the age of to come out. But is it my only option to just wait until their frontal lobe develops in agony and sadness?
Jack.
Nah.
So, first of all, I get your frustration, but you're making a bunch of claims that really aren't likely to change anything or even accurately address the problem with Christianity. No, you're not stuck merely waiting, but to some extent, I would recommend waiting. And what, you're like, oh, what can atheists do for me? What can the line do for me? Who knows? Maybe nothing. Because I don't necessarily know how much we can do in Thailand. There are a number of organizations that are working on the problem from a number of different angles. For many people, having the conversation will change their mind. For other people, seeing the conversation happen might change their mind. Then there's other people who you might, when talking about kids, you might not be able to influence them at all. I'm always a big fan of teaching kids how to think rather than what to think. Don't just fill them with facts and assertions, inspire curiosity and all of that. But there are some people that we're gonna have to wait to die off. And there are other people where we need to change the world around them to make it less comfortable to simply say, oh, this is what I believe, no big deal. And instead expect people to be able to defend what it is that they believe. As long as religion is, or the various religions are believed by the majority of the population, the rest of us have to continue working to try to change the world. And you may have to, in some cases, say, I'm not going to be able to reach that person. I'm not going to immediately be able to protect that person. But what I can do is start working with other people to start changing laws that put religion in privileged positions so that religions are preferred to irreligion, to encourage critical thinking and skepticism in school and as part of education, to help the world get over this latest anti-science, I don't know, mind virus that's taken over the planet. I can remember when it was like, oh, that's science. And people were like, yeah. And, you'd put scientists on TV and be like, here's what's going on. And now, because of the internet, with everybody having access to all kinds of information and some of it being wrong, everybody seems to think they're an expert, or at least that they are sufficiently versed that they can ignore what the scientists are saying about the actual facts and science and the models that are there. So the unfortunate truth, Jack, is that we need as many people as we can supporting the various organizations that are trying to make changes, but I don't know what specific changes need to be made in your area. And I don't know who's working on that project myself. There are like international organizations, but I don't know how many are in Thailand or focus on Thailand. And it may, it's like, I can't do anything in North Korea. I mean, I can't change a thing in North Korea because I just can't get there. But it may be that.
I am actually Korean, not North Korean.
Oh, wow.
But
wow.
I
have an uncle. So my niece and nephew, my niece and nephew are Korean, but I had an uncle who was a missionary in Thailand. And so while I've never been over there, I have connections to the area. And what I'm going to tell you, honestly, as much as I hate to, is you don't have to just wait, but there are aspects of this where you can wait for things to change, or you can help work to change those things. But they're both going to require patience and waiting.
Yeah. I would also recommend, these are your kids you're talking about. So like, it's not like there's somebody you don't have access to. It's not like it's somebody that you're going to have a hard time talking to. You can wait until the next time they say something about this God, like, oh, this is the beautiful thing, whatever, God did this, and just ask a question. Why do you think that? What's going on there? Explain that to me. Let's hash that out for a second. Why does that make any sense? The same way that you would have a conversation if they, asked a question about how the car works, or if they said something about, somebody designed a building that doesn't make any sense, or somebody like if they said any factually inaccurate thing or asked any random science question, if it's a religious one or something to do with religion, that's an opportunity to have a good conversation about it. And to at least, like I said, just let them know, oh, I don't think that's real. Here's why. And there's lots of people that don't think that's real. And here's why. And just letting them kind of play with it on their own, because you as a parent and me as an educator, I think we both know very well the best possible way to get kids to do a thing is to make sure they know you don't want them to do it, and to tell them not to, and to harass them about it. But if you just make it an option and like let it be something that they can explore and get curious about on their own, and something that they can dive into and ask more questions about, and be a bonding experience with their father, something that they can spend time with people that they love and like learn more about them, like those are all great ways to get kids excited about learning a thing and challenging an idea. Especially if they think that they're getting one over on the man by challenging this idea, they're rebellious. You know what I mean? Teenagers love that. And so like, there's ways to approach this and that would be attractive and exciting for a teenager. And there's ways to approach this that would just be gentle, kind parenting on your part. So it doesn't have to be this battle. It doesn't have to be like a big world ending thing. It doesn't have to be dramatic, anything like that. There are ways that you can help talk to them there are ways you can help them just by being there for them and being honest with them about what you do and don't believe on their time and on their terms.
Well, I will commit to waiting, because I have been doing that for quite some time. How fast can I get to more involved onto what you guys are doing? How about the super chat or the super join? Does it help?
Yeah, I mean, the line is a business. And so if you want to help us, you can join our Patreon, you can become a channel member, you can send a super chat, you can do all those things. If you have millions of dollars to give, might I recommend this cool organization called Doctors Without Borders, which I'm currently raising money for. They're saving lives all over the world in places like Gaza and Ukraine and Sudan and Yemen and Chad and Congo. But like, there's places to get involved with this atheist community and other atheist communities out there. There's lots of organizations you can donate to, like Recovering from Religion. Freedom from Religion is more just an American organization, but it helps. There's plenty of places you can tune into and donate to and be a part of, including the Line Network.
Yeah. There's a number of different organizations that I donate to. Let me tell you what donating to the Line does. Whether it's, I'm not even completely sure what the best way is. I mean, there's linemerch.com, there's patreon.com/calltheline, and then there's
Patreon's
sorry,
the
what?
best.
Patreon's the
Patreon
best
is
one,
the
yeah.
best.
I got it. So Patreon is evidently the one of the best, which means they're taking the least amount of cuts. But I can tell you that what goes into the line, basically it keeps, I get paid for being here. It keeps me in healthcare and it keeps a roof over my head. And that's good enough to do the work. If you value what we're doing here at the line, you can, by all means, donate, and patreon.com/calltheline is probably the best way. That said, I'm not going to be making any promises about what we're going to be able to specifically do for you or anybody else. I would reach out to some of the international organizations. Maybe send me an email or send somebody an email and we can kind of talk about stuff, because there are organizations that I would not support, but there are several organizations that I would. Unfortunately, man, this is going to make me look bad. Sorry, Jack. Most of the organizations that I support and donate to are focused more on the United States, just because that's where I live, and because what happens here impacts it impacts you in Thailand, perhaps not as much as it does in Western Europe and stuff, and Eastern Europe for sure, but it still impacts everybody. If Donald Trump becomes president, that's going to impact people around the world. Same thing if Kamala Harris becomes president, it's going to impact people around the world, and it's not just about the presidential race. Yeah. So yeah, I'm happy to see that you're eager to support. I genuinely can't tell you who to support as the best option for you and your situation. I am happy to get more donors to the Line Network, so that we can keep doing what we do. But you've got to decide for you what's right. And I wish I had better advice. And Jimmy's probably like, dude, just tell him, donate to the Line. Hey, but okay, donate to the Line. But find the organizations that are going to do the best for you as well and focus on that.
Yeah, for us, it pays our salaries, but also it is the call-in studio where people call in from, that costs money. VMix, which running the show like that costs money. Like every aspect of this costs quite a bit.
Every second
and so
you
like
were on hold,
it costs us money. Yeah, and so like all of that does go into it a lot. And also there's plenty of other things you can do. It really is about what hits closest to home.
Yeah, we have to pay for every second that somebody's on hold, every second that somebody's on the call, and we do that out of the donations, in part because we want to hear from people like you, because we're a small YouTube channel and we're not focused on your issue and certainly not your area, but we could be. And there's a number of organizations we'll work with, like Recovering from Religion. I'm on the board of directors for American Atheists, and while that is focused on the United States primarily, the American Atheist Organization often works with international organizations as well towards other issues. But yeah, I appreciate your interest, Jack, and I really empathize with the situation you're in. Hopefully you find the organizations and the groups that are going to help you most. And if you don't, start one. Use your funding there to start an organization, get together with people in your area that are focused on even small tasks, like making sure that the encroachment of religious privilege doesn't continue to get a broader hold in, Thailand or anywhere in the world. Whoops. Did we lose Jack?
Might have just fallen asleep because we were just explaining our finances for the past 15 minutes.
I think we lost Jack because that call's off.
Damn.
So bummer. Well, I hope you got some
helps,
information, Jack. Yeah, you could start. Somebody in chat said you could start a Thailand atheist community. You absolutely could. There's all kinds of options there. I know I could name international organizations, but there's a couple of them that I know have had some problems, and I don't want to accidentally recommend the wrong one. I remember years ago when I was on another show, which unfortunately Forrest still occasionally does, but I'm fucking with you. You know that. But when I was on another show, there were, back before Mandisa and I were close, when she had started Black Non-Believers, there was also Black Atheists of Atlanta. And if I'm getting the name wrong, I apologize, but they were this awful racist public access show where they had, like the white man was the devil and all this other stuff. And I accidentally was like, oh, you guys should check out Black Atheists of Atlanta. And Mandisa and some other people were like, whoa, that's not us. That's this other group. They're problematic. They had, was that somebody in chat? No, was that the one with Charlie Checkham? Why is that name? I'm so bad with names and I don't remember names like this. Somebody can check me to see if that was, or if I'm conflating two things with Charlie Checkham. In any case, holy moly. Forrest Valkai, we just did like 3 hours. We're going to probably do that same thing next Sunday at 2.
Probably so, knowing us. Yeah.
Between now and next week, what do you got going on? Where should people look for you? Finding your TikTok and all your science and learning stuff.
So you can find me on the internets, TikTok. I'm called Renegade Science Teacher, or you can just look for my name here on YouTube. Also youtube.com/@Renegade Science Teacher, or just look for my name. Check out, I've just recorded a new Reacteria, which I'm in the middle of editing, where we're looking at a rip-off movie that Eric Hovind made called Night at the Creation Museum, where he does the Night at the Museum movie, but he's at a creation, he's at the Answers in Genesis Museum, and there's a lot of problematic shit in there, and so that's really fun. You can check that out. More importantly, however, Roll for Initiative has raised over $28,000 for Doctors Without Borders, and it would mean a lot to me. If you have an extra couple of bucks or several million and you live in Thailand and you want to get rid of some money, to just head over to my playlist, Roll for Initiative. You don't have to watch the videos if you don't want to. It's okay. But do use our links to donate. There's a YouTube link, and there's a Tiltify link in the description, and there's a merch store there. If you use our links to donate to Doctors Without Borders, we don't touch a dime of it. It all goes straight to them, and we can keep track of it. And that's really important for us, because that way we see how much money we've raised, and we can then tell sponsors, hey, we've raised this much money. Please give us funding to do another season so we can raise more money. Because so far we have raised like several times more than any sponsor gave us. We have raised way more than we took in to do this project. So please donate to Doctors Without Borders, and please use our link to do so. That would be really, really cool. Thank you so much. And Jack just sent us 10,000 Thailand dollars. I don't know what they use in Thailand, but like 10,000 of them. Jesus of fucking Christland, Jack. Thank you so much for your generosity and kindness.
It's about $300. Holy moly. Thanks so much, Jack. I cannot possibly express the kindness. So let me wrap all this up for everybody. First of all, I'm Matt Dillahunty. I've been Matt Dillahunty for a while now, as long as I can remember. And joining me this week and next week also Forrest Valkai. But you're watching the Line Network. I've already given you a list of all the other shows that are going to be on the network. First thing to watch is just tune into Skeptalk tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Central. John Gleason's going to be here along with Paul Ince from Paulogia. I love doing the Sunday shows. I love doing the regular one and After Dark. I like taking the calls. I like learning stuff I didn't know and doing some sort of good somewhere. And that's got to be enough sometimes. The world is a weird, messy place. And there's a lot that's going to happen between now and Election Day in the United States. There's going to be a lot of things happening on this network. There's going to be a lot of conversation in shows. There's going to be a lot more political content. But in addition to the content that I do here, I'm going to do something unusual, which is promote my own YouTube and Patreon channel. Patreon.com/atheist debates. I produce about 4 videos a month. I produce exactly 4 videos every single month. I just set 4 videos to be released over the next couple weeks. I'm getting ready. I mean, they're already shot and going live. I'll be doing some others. But here's the thing. In all these years, I've never made a penny off of my personal YouTube channel. I keep talking about how that's going to change. Forrest is like, you haven't fucking done that yet? You've been talking about that for ages.
It's ridiculous.
And Arden's like, yes, I'm about to come punch you in the back of the head when the show's over. Here's what I want to do. I'm 55. I am a former world-class gamer. I stream on Twitch regularly. I used to run the #1 Counter-Strike team on the planet. But I stream on Twitch and I play a lot of things, including Binding of Isaac. And then I also have this, and I have the snake stuff. When my channel is finally monetized, and I'm thinking this is going to happen sometime in the October timeframe, one of the first things going to happen, I'm going to do a Please Don't Die 24-hour live stream of me on my own channel to kick that off. And I will be having friends on to talk. I'll be playing video games. I will be showing off snakes. I will be taking questions. I will be doing whatever debates. There's going to be a 24-hour thing at some point. In the meantime, just here at the line, in just a second, while I'm talking, Arden's going to roll the credits and you're going to see producers' names and stuff go by. You can become one of those individuals and help us run this program by going to patreon.com/calltheline. You can also support by joining the channel, subscribing on YouTube. You can go to linemerch.com. There are direct donation links down there in the chat for PayPal and Cash App. But if you're unable to send money or unwilling to send money, that's also fine. Show up, interact, spread the word, and share both full shows and clips. When we put up a clip that you really like, share it with your friends. Get them to call in. Get your pastor to call in. In the meantime, take care of yourself.